On this episode of the DTVC podcast, Todd Liebenow from Forgotten Filmcast is back, and we're going to be looking at Malibu Express, the one that started Sidaris' Lethal Lady series, the unofficial start, right, to the Lethal Lady series, but a really fun conversation that we have there, so stay tuned for that. And then next week, Ty from Quobitz is back for his monthly hit. We're going to be looking at Two from Cam Gigande, so it's kind of a take on the Philippi Factory. We're looking at Mafia Wars, which has Tom Welling, who kind of looks more like Mark Schlereth now, if you know Mark Schlereth from NFL football. That Mafia Wars is one, and then the other one is, I think, 72 Hours. Ty and I have seen so many movies that deal with time in some way, shape, or form that, it's hard to keep them all straight, but I think it's 72 Hours is the number. So anyway, stay tuned for that next week. And then DTVC Extra, I was going to do, I actually recorded an episode on Marvel Cinematic Universe Phase 4, but I didn't like it. So we'll see if I get a new one in or not. I'm going away this weekend, so probably if I don't get it recorded before then, it probably won't be until sometime next week. I think with the MCU Phase 4, I kind of was going on it. I was kind of doing it more like I usually do. I kind of just, have a basic outline of how I wanted to talk and then fly by the seat of my pants. But then I actually started thinking of some better ways to phrase it, some better ways to go about it. So I didn't really like that first one, so I scrapped it. We'll do a new one here in the coming weeks. So we'll definitely get that in there for you at some point. And then in terms of the YouTube channel, I did put out a new video. It was 2 scenes from The Foreigner. More Seagal. Went back to the Seagal road. I realized after the fact that the audio on the movie part of it wasn't as good as it sounded when I was running it through OBS and testing it and everything. So I don't know what happened there when I got it up on YouTube and listened to it there. So it's not as good as the other video. And as a result, it's not really doing as well numbers-wise. But we'll see. I don't know if I'm going to get a video up this weekend just because I'm going to be away. But the next one I think I'm going to do is One Man Force, especially the shootout with the scene where Matuzik takes the refrigerator and attacks somebody with it. So keep an eye out for that. And then in terms of the blog, thinking about doing Aftermath, Dylan Sprouse film that Ty and I covered on a podcast back when we did Armor, the Sylvester Stallone movie. So a Netflix original with Dylan Sprouse, and also Cuba Gooding Jr.'s son, I think his name's Mason Gooding, plays the baddie in it. So real interesting movie, that one. So I think that's what we're going to be doing this weekend. It'll be interesting to see because, again, I'm going up to see my family, and I'll be taking the train up from Philly to Boston. So Amtrak is notoriously bad for their Wi-Fi. So we'll see if the Wi-Fi is good enough for me to do the blog post there on my way up. But, we'll see what happens. And then in terms of me guesting on other podcasts, I did record with Todd Liebenow. Speaking of him being on this episode here, we did Firestorm for his podcast. So keep an eye out for that on Forgotten Filmcast. It should be out soon. I got killed on the trivia. Spoiler alert there. I got destroyed. I was thinking Howie Long. I was expecting more sports questions, and it was more like movie questions about people like Scott Glenn and Barry Pepper. And I had to confess that I hadn't seen Raising Arizona yet, which I actually was planning on watching it over the weekend. Still haven't seen it, so I do need to see Raising Arizona. It's I guess I would say a gap in my filmography or my film watching that I really need to fix there. So so a really bad admission there, and also not a great job on the trivia. It is interesting. I do a podcast and a blog and all this stuff on movies, but sports is kind of my thing as well. I definitely attend more sporting events than I go to the movie theater every year by a large margin. So I've been to 3 movies in the theater this year. I've been to, I think, 8 baseball games alone, and then I think like 4 or 5 hockey and a couple basketball. So that's just this year. That's like January 1st calendar year. And not only going to games in Philadelphia, but like kind of scattered across the Northeast. For the reason sports seems to be a bigger one for me, even though I love movies as well. And I do a blog on movies and a podcast on movies and all that stuff. So I don't know. Maybe I should do a sports one too. Who knows? But anyway, so keep an eye out for that Forgotten Filmcast episode. That was a lot of fun talking about Firestorm. The Howie Long movie. So, I vaguely remember that being out. As I mentioned on the podcast, I didn't see it because it came out in January of '98, and there was a huge ice storm in Maine. And so when I went back to school at the University of Maine in Orono, the Dollar Theater that we would usually see a movie like that at was closed for like a good month or two, I think, if I remember right. So, so an interesting one there. Also, John Cross from After Movie Diner, I was on his podcast. I'm not sure when that episode's going to drop, but what did we talk about on that one? Oh, we talked about Becky, the 2 Becky movies. So Becky and Wrath of Becky. So look for that. And also, I was not on this episode, but John just recently posted posted that for PM Podcast, he got the big interview. He got the Don the Dragon Wilson interview. So keep an eye out. You should be subscribed to the PM Entertainment Podcast so you can check that out as well. All right, yeah. Then before we get stuck in on the podcast episode, my books. Check out Nadia and Aiden. People have been picking that up. Again, if you don't want to buy the hardcover, or sorry, the paperback copy of it, you don't want a physical version of it. The Kindle version works just fine. So all you need to have is a tablet or your phone. Maybe a little bit harder to read on your phone, but definitely a tablet. You just need the Kindle app. So you don't even need a Kindle device to get the Kindle version. I get almost the same amount of money for. I think I get like almost $3 for a Kindle and like just over $3 for a paperback version. So it's pretty much the same one, even though the price is way different. I want to say it's like I don't know, $3.99 maybe for the Kindle version versus $10.99 for the paperback. So yeah, you don't need to buy the paperback. I'm plenty happy if you want to get the Kindle version. That works out just as well, and I get paid just as much. So and thank you to people out there who bought that the Nadia and Aiden recently. I really appreciate that. Well, anyway, yeah, why don't we cut this here, have John from from Miscellaneous Plumbing Fixtures playing our theme song, and then when we come back, Todd Liebenow from Forgotten Filmcast is on, and we will be looking at Malibu Express. The DTVC podcast. As always, this is Matt, and I am joined once again by a very special guest. We've got Todd Liebenow from Forgotten Filmcast. Welcome back, Todd.
Thanks for having me. Always great to be here.
Yeah, and it's since you've been on, I figure we've done a Dolph movie, we've done a PM Entertainment movie, we've done a Canon movie. I figured it was time to do a Sidaris movie, and I thought, I know the '80s, that's your wheelhouse, and I figured Malibu Express would be a perfect one for that.
Yeah. I mean, this is it's not really where it all began for Sidaris, but it's pretty close. I guess it's the official beginning of the quote unquote series that we have now. 12 films, I think, in the series, and this is the first one.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And I think what happens with this movie, thinking about sort of the '80s as a decade with the kind of the start of cable and the home video market. I think Sidaris, when he made this movie, he made it with Hugh Hefner, and they both pitched in like $250,000 for the budget. And then I guess Hefner didn't like the results. He thought the women were too sweaty and too action oriented. And of course, Sidaris is like, well, that's what I do for movies. But I think when he saw that this movie made a lot of money outside of being in the theater, because it had like a very limited release, I think he was like, oh, wow, there's money to be had on, HBO or cable and in these video stores with, these rental mom and pops, shelling out $80 a pop for VHSs. Maybe I should make more of these.
Yeah. And this is one I certainly associate with HBO, Showtime, the 80s cable circuit, because like a memory I have when I was a teenager and when we first got cable TV, the town I lived in, we were behind when it came to cable. We didn't get cable till the summer of 1986. And but I remember back then, like the TV guide that you would get in the newspaper, the Sunday paper every week, not the magazine TV guide, the one that came in the newspaper. But even in that, if you would go to the back of the TV guide every week, they actually had a section in there that showed all the movies that were going to be on TV, and that eventually included cable. So they would list all the movies that were going to be on HBO, Showtime, etc. And Malibu Express was just one that was always on the list. And, so of course that kind of piques your interest because you're like, well, why am I always seeing this movie listed there? And why is it always on at like 11:30 at night?
Right, exactly. Well, because you make a great point. One, I also remember that weekly insert on the Sunday paper that would have the TV. It was like you said, it was like a TV guide. It always had like a because I guess it was like the same for it was like a syndicated thing, right? Where it was like they would do some kind of interview and then they would have the local programming on. And
Yeah.
I remember that was like it was like always like this thing that was like in addition. My family finally did shell out for the TV guide, but I remember that one was always a big deal for me that I would want to look through it and circle different things that were on. And but I remember too that there was a period where HBO was kind of king for these kind of movies, and then when USA and those channels were able to show like kind of edited versions at late at night, I think to keep their subscribers, that's when they started doing their own original programming. But a movie like this was kind of like a perfect one for them. And I imagine that's probably what Sidaris saw was like, hey, this is just like he probably saw exactly what you were seeing, that this movie was on every night in HBO.
Well, and we keep saying HBO, but in my mind, I always think of this one and the Sidaris movies in general more with Showtime. Showtime to me always seemed like a little bit lower rent version of HBO. And I'm not saying there wasn't the schlocky stuff, the exploitative stuff on HBO, but Showtime really seemed to carve out a chunk of time every night in those late night hours where they showed these movies that depended a lot on women taking their clothes off and things like that.
Yeah, and to your point too, like they weren't exactly like the softcore stuff that Cinemax started showing in the late '80s.
Cinemax went overboard.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's why we say Skinemax at
Exactly.
times. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean 1985, that would have been right on the cusp of when Cinemax became Skinemax. I don't know if they were still having like Robert Culp hosted classic movies at that time in '85.
I don't remember. I mean, we only had Cinemax for a short time at my house, probably because there was, so much of this kind of stuff on there. I always remember on Showtime, and I can't remember his name, but there was this film critic guy that had a big mustache. It wasn't Gene Shalit, but it was another guy who, was kind of always wearing like a corduroy suit, and he had this big, like brush style mustache and such, and he was always talking up the movies that he knew were garbage, things like that.
Yeah, that's like, I mean, yeah, because we never actually had those pay channels. What I remember was two things. Was one, you'd have like the free weekends, and
Right.
I mean, the classic one that I remember, I was like 5 or 6 years old when Jaws 3, the water park one, that was on a Friday night on the the free HBO weekend. I was supposed to be in bed. My parents were watching it in the living room, and I snuck out right at the scene where the body surfaces and the worms come out of his mouth. And I remember the next day, my aunt and uncle had a pool, and we were there, for this pool party thing. And of course, because everybody in our area had the same cable company, so everybody got the same free HBO free preview, and everybody was watching the same stuff. Everybody was talking about it, and they're like, "Oh, remember when the guy came out with the worms coming out of his?" It was just like, yeah, it was like I couldn't manage it. But the other time we got HBO, we didn't get it, but my friends had those descrambler boxes, that somebody would like sell at the back of a truck on the traffic circle or something like that, and those had every channel, of course. That's how the Tyson fight against McNeely when he came back from being in prison. We watched it at a friend's house for free, which was nice because, spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't seen that fight, it isn't that long. But yeah, to your point, like, there was this period of time where someone like a Sidaris, I think it was like, I don't know that he ever would have made another one of these movies if it hadn't been for the money that he was making, both with cable. And then I saw Fred Olin Ray recently talk about the money that he made in the early days of the video store market, that apparently they made more money when it was just mom and pops buying them for $80 a pop than it was when everybody could buy them for $20 a piece.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's wild to think about. There's always been a part of me that's wondered how much money was there in this whole game that they were doing, of just basically making movies to stock the shelves at video stores, and then they'd show up on late night cable and such. But I mean, we've still got versions of that today. It's got to be pretty lucrative in certain ways. So, I'm all for it. I mean, these type of movies, I don't know. There's just something very charming about these films where they are not worried about, we've got to bring in tons of audience on the first weekend. We got to get it in all these theaters, whatever. We're just going to do our thing. And as long as we put a nice flashy image on the cover and such, a certain crowd of people are going to go for it. And that's going to make us some money, So.
Right. And I kind of, it's one of the interesting things about these movies, like you said, that there's, when you're not making it for a certain kind of gate, I guess, when you're not thinking about that initial weekend gate, and the 80s, I think is kind of one of those first, the first decade where that was really a thing, where I think it was, I don't know, for me, it seems like it was like the late 70s where you had like Spielberg with Jaws and, Lucas with the Star Wars films. And then I know, recently on the Lambcast episode 777, when you guys were talking about the new Superman, there's the Donner 78 Superman. And there's this sense of like these movies that they're putting a lot of money into, they needed to produce early on. It was like, what is that opening weekend? I think like Star Trek, they solidified the rights to the second movie just based off of the opening weekend. And,
Right.
and it's, that now we live in this age where it's like that's like the only thing. It's like if a studio looks at a movie and says it's not going to pull in a certain X amount of number, on that opening weekend, there's no point in us even bothering with it. We don't even want to distribute it. You may get a limited release somewhere, but really we're talking about straight to Netflix, straight to Hulu. Whereas like the 80s, that thing had just started then, but you'd still have movies like Dead Poet Society that would be a top 10 earner for its year. And it was a nice mix of movies at that decade, I think.
Well, and there wasn't that emphasis on, we got to be the top movie of the weekend. I mean, today it almost feels like people are chicken to even try. Most weekends there's one movie that's releasing. That's the movie. I the last couple of years I've I decided I've got a little extra funds, I've got a little extra time on my hand, I'm gonna do the AMC thing, and I go every week. And it's not like I have tons to pick from every week. There's one movie that's opening, Superman's out, and nothing out is opening that weekend because they're all afraid, Superman's definitely going to be the number one movie of the weekend. Now, yes, every now and then you get your Barbenheimer weekends, your things like that, but that's pretty rare. And you're seeing these movies that, used to be in the movie theaters that are going right to streaming and such. I mean, as we're recording this is the weekend that The Naked Gun is opening. And a lot of people are saying this is really important because this is a comedy that's coming to the theaters, because comedies have been relegated to streaming, it seems like. And I went and saw it yesterday. It's really good, and I hope it does well because we gotta, I don't know, we just gotta get more theater movement going here, and it's not always just the biggest movie of the weekend. I mean, I love this direct-to-video stuff, but wouldn't it be cool to go see something like Malibu Express in the theater again today? I mean, come on.
No, I think that's a fantastic point. And I think too, like just thinking about the stuff that was big in the 80s, I wonder how many of those properties would be greenlighted for a theatrical release now if they weren't an existing IP. So, I mean, Jaws, I think, shark movies are big now, but like if they hadn't been, if Spielberg came to I guess Spielberg could probably get it. But, if somebody said, hey, I've got this idea for Jaws, I mean, obviously Star Wars is the big one, right? People say if Lucas came to the studios with Star Wars, a Lucas type person, no one would greenlight it. I think Raiders of the Lost Ark, I think is another one that you would have trouble getting past the studio. That's this. I mean, Back to the Future, Ghostbusters, all of these ones that we take for granted as classics, and you had this cadre of directors at that time who were interested in making magic on the screen. Spielberg, Lucas, Zemeckis, Donner. I mean, you were talking about it in the on the Lambcast episode about Superman, how, Donner's like, you're going to believe that Superman can fly. It wasn't like they were making a comic book movie. They were trying to make this, magical cinematic experience. And now it's more about like, it's not about like making the best thing you can and hoping, people are gravitate towards it. It's about, is there a hook that brings people in initially that without, trusting that the screen or the directors made something special.
Yeah. Can we make it for this weekend?
Right.
That's as far as we need to get. We need to do well this weekend that we're opening it, and then from there we know somebody else is going to be there.
Yeah, and I remember because I was listening to some of your most recent episodes, and I know you did The Curve, a movie from 1998, and
Yeah.
you were talking about how you've got nostalgia for the 80s, but not really for the 90s because you weren't necessarily going to the theater at that time and everything. But for me, I was in high school in the 90s, and I still don't really have a 90s nostalgia the way I do for 80s movies. That decade is just unique in that sense that just you had so much magic on the screen. But even like movies like the John Hughes movies, there was something special about those that I don't know, and the comedies too, I guess, like Stripes or Meatballs or something like that.
I mean, when I look back, I go, it was just the perfect time for me, in terms of just becoming a movie fan. There was so much that was out that was geared towards a teenage audience. There was the stuff that was coming out of like, those first couple of years of Saturday Night Live, where you had the people that were a part of those casts that were making the jump to the big screen, and we loved going to those type of movies. You had the real boom of the action stuff with the big action stars like your Schwarzeneggers, your Stallones, Bruce Willis, things like that. And then just the whole video store and cable TV culture, there was always something to watch. And we would tape the stuff. We had our VCRs. We'd tape it to watch it later. You'd tape those things that were on overnight that you didn't want mom and dad to know you taped, things like that. At this, comparing it to today, I mean, yes, we've got this wealth of stuff and all these streaming services, and you can go on there and find stuff to watch. I find it so much harder today, though. I mean, there was something magical about just you sit down and you turn on HBO and you watch whatever's on, or you go to the video store and you go, ooh, that cover, that looks cool, and the movie's not going to live up to that, but you rent it anyway. And I spend half my night now scrolling through going, what am I going to watch? What am I going to watch? I got 7,000 things here on my just watch list, but I can't decide which one I'm going to watch,
No, that's a great point too. Cause it's like, I think, when I was growing up in the 80s, I remember like something like a Ghostbusters, for example. I would have been too young to see that in the theater, in its initial run. But I remember the networks would make these sort of special nights out of airing movies like that or Back to the Future.
Oh yeah, world television premiere. Yeah,
yeah, and even that kind of thing. Now it's like like the USA Network. It's like they'll just do all Fast and Furious and all SVU or whatever, and it's almost kind of cynical at this point with kind of how things air on these movie channels and things like that. Now, and of course, HBO, I think realized with the home video market becoming so robust that they needed to create their own programming, which is what saved them. I mean, The Sopranos, Wire, all those channels. But in a way, we kind of lost something a little bit with that because, the market changed so much at that time.
Yeah, I mean, HBO stands for home box office. The idea was you're watching movies at home, and that was the whole hook of it. They had some original TV shows, but that wasn't their main emphasis. And it was just, I mean, it was like filler material. It was not necessarily the news and things like that.
Well, and I remember, we had neighbors or a friend of mine that he had HBO. And I remember that what they would do is they would look for, new movies that were going to be on HBO, and they'd tape them. And they had a collection of like over 100 of these movies. And you could go over there and borrow something, or again, we'd start renting things from the as well. But you'd have this like super long play with 3 movies on it, and they would always be like 3 completely random ones. It'd be like
yes.
Nightmare on Elm Street, Ghostbusters, and I don't know what the third one would be. Dirty Dancing, or something. I'm just trying to think of like the different ones that would be on there. But it was always an interesting thing. I remember when I had chicken pox in it was like 1990 or 91 or something. Because my mom was friends with my friend's mom. And so she brought over a whole bunch of these tapes. And so the thing was, I had the chicken pox on my feet. And so we figured out the only thing that helped was salt water. So my parents went to the beach. My dad got a 5-gallon bucket from the beach filled with ocean water, and I just kind of sat there and watched all of these movies that they had. And I mean, there were things like Ghostbusters 2, which it's like, yeah, Ghostbusters 2 probably not as, classic, iconic as the first one, but it was the kind of thing you could just sit and watch and just do it. And again, it wasn't me having to go through and search for what I wanted. It was like, here's your tape. This is the 3 movies you're going to watch. And it's like, okay, I'm going to watch them.
And I mean, doing that, we watch these movies over and over and over again. And even the ones that are not stellar, I think we developed a certain appreciation for them. And so, I'm able to sit there and watch Police Academy 4, Citizens on Patrol, and go like, there's some cool things about this movie, Tony Hawk's in it doing skateboarding, and there's Sharon Stone. It's just, you were able to really mine even just the worst movies for those things that were kind of fun, kind of special, and I think that's part of what helped us develop as film fans, where we can watch movies like, I mean, spoiler, Malibu Express is no great cinematic achievement, but we can certainly pull things out of it that we can go, that's fun. Even if it's certainly not Citizen Kane.
Right, exactly. No, and I think like I don't, for my friends and I with the '90s, it was because the movies in the '90s, it felt like there was like you had this sort of this top end blockbuster thing. And then you had like the indie revolution that was happening, in the mid '90s. There was almost like a backlash to that. And so there wasn't a lot of like a Dead Poet Society kind of movie in between, but those movies still were in the theater. And I can remember like, if on a weekend, some of us worked, some of us didn't, because even in the '90s, you could still work during the week in school. I think nowadays it's harder for kids to work during the week, when they have school. But some of my friends would have the weekend off, some of them wouldn't, and so for us that had the weekend off, we would have to find things to do while those other friends were getting off from work, and it would be like a $5 matinee of anything would be an easy way to kill 2 hours. And it was like common thing. Now I don't really even think about that, because it's like, one, I mean, I guess maybe adjusted for inflation it is roughly the same price, but I actually did that a couple of years ago. I watched the Marvels. I just was in the city. I had a couple hours to get like an hour and 45 minutes or whatever. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to watch this movie. And I hadn't really done that in like maybe like 30 years or 25 years or something like that. And it was like a common thing back then that we would just, that's how you killed time, was just go see anything in the theater.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of what I do nowadays with, having the AMC A-list or whatever. The way my work schedule is, I get to take off early on Fridays, so I have a chunk of time there on the afternoon, and so I go to the movies, and a lot of times I will go see something that wouldn't necessarily have been tops on my list to go catch in the theater. But because I've got time on Friday afternoon and I've got that deal, I go do it, and that's fun. It's fun to just be able to go, oh, I've got a little time here, let's watch a movie. You're talking about just kind of the, randomly going to movies in the 80s and such like that. I mean, like back then, and I don't think there is anything like this, at least not in my area anymore, but we used to have the dollar theater back then, which you would go to like the mall for the first run stuff, the multiplex, but then like a lot of the little downtown theaters, like in your suburban town, would they became the dollar theater. And like the one in my hometown, sadly no longer open anymore, but when it was at its full glory when I was a kid, and it was just one screen with a 1,000-seat theater. It looked like the Muppet Show theater in there. It actually had a box where the Statler and Waldorf would sit. But and eventually they chopped it down into like 4 smaller screens or whatever. But it was the dollar theater. And so, on a Saturday night, you'd go down there, you shell out $1 for a movie that's already been out for 2 months, and you watch it. And that was fantastic. I wish we still had that kind of experience now, because it wasn't even just going to the theater and seeing the movie, but you're at like a a smaller theater, so things are a little more rough. They don't necessarily clean the floor after every showing, and the print that they're showing has been out there for a couple months, so you see every scratch, every pop, things like that. There's something just charming about that.
Well, yeah, and I think that brings up another point that I think is about the modern movie experience that we don't get. Like you said, the dollar theater was great. When I went to the University of Maine, there was one. I think it's still open. I don't think they do dollar showings. I think they're like $5 showings or something like that now. So adjusted for inflation. But they used to have Tuesday dollar nights, and so that was like the whole campus would go on Tuesday nights to see whatever. I can't remember how many movies I saw, like different ones when I think back to that period. But the other thing was that movies would last in the theater longer. And so, you like the dollar theater would have movies to show. And now it's like this thing where it's like, if you don't catch a movie within the first month, there's a good chance you've missed it. Like you're not going to be able to see it again. Or like the showings, the available showings shrinks considerably. And it's like, I was trying to think of one of the ones that happened like that recently. I think I'm trying to remember which one it was. There was one that I saw in the theater recently where I was like, man, I needed to catch it as soon as possible because it was already starting to drop in the number of screens that it was showing on. Oh, no, you know what it was? I was going to see A Working Man in the theater. And, and it started out with only like 10 p.m. showings and things like that. And it's like, well, I can't do a 10 p.m. showing. It's the last subway is 12:30 at night. So I don't know, I don't want to spend an extra $20 on an Uber home. But you could, you'd have a movie like, say, like I remember Star Wars Attack of the Clones. My friend and I, we saw that in the theater like a good 3 months after it came out. We just were killing time on a Saturday and we went and saw it. And I mean, I can't imagine any Star Wars movie, if they released it now, would be in the theater more than a month later.
Well, and talking about Star Wars brings to mind for me, like movies back then also used to be released again.
Yeah.
So you'd have like the initial release, and then 6 months later or something like that, they would release the big ones again to those lower level theaters. This was actually kind of before a bunch of them became the dollar theater. But like I remember back in 1980, Empire Strikes Back came out. Went and saw it in the theater with my grandpa, my cousins, the big theater and that. And then several months later, after it had been out for a while, they did a new, like, okay, it's releasing again to these theaters instead. And that's when it opened at my hometown theater. And I mean, this is 6-7 months after the initial release. And we go on opening night and there's a line around the block to go see The Empire Strikes Back. And it was so fantastic. Like I said, 1,000-seat theater. Everybody was in there. I had the worst seat in the house. I mean, remember I said there was like a box like where Statler and Waldorf would sit. Okay. I was like way on that end, right underneath the box. It was a terrible, it's like the third row. It was like terrible seats because that's all there was. But it's just such a memorable movie going experience for me because I saw Empire Strikes Back on that big old screen and, full house. It was amazing.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. I mean, one of the things I read about why we've lost that experience is that Disney in particular, but kind of the other major studios, they don't like those indie theaters because they don't have as much control over what they show, how they show things. I mean, one of the big things was when Disney bought out the Fox library. Fox used to license their movies to these indie theaters, and then the indie theaters would do like a special showing of, say, something like Better Off Dead, or something like that. And everybody, or Say Anything, I think is the big one because that was a Fox one. And people would go to see Say Anything on like a Wednesday night, and then see what else that theater was showing. Be like, I'm going to go check this out. This Italian movie looks good, or whatever it is. They go to the movie theater. And Disney, when they bought out that, they were like, well, we don't do that. We don't let indie theaters, do these special showings of movies. And so that kind of hurt their business. But then the other thing too is that like they have this model of like they try to like jam the theaters with their movies so that their competitors also can't get films in. And so it's kind of reduced our options, both in the ability to go to some of these indie theaters and have that really fun experience like you were talking about, but then also the options when you like in your case where you've got the AMC pass and you want to go to more movies and it's like, well, I've already seen everything. Like what else am I going to see?
Yeah. I wish that there were more of those kind of that were the indie theaters that are now like repertory houses. And I know in a lot of places they do have them. I mean, like you could trip over them in LA and such. But like where I am here in Denver, all the old theaters like that, that's not what they do. They don't do movies really anymore. A lot of them are concert venues primarily. We just had in our news that there was a theater. Oh, I'm trying to think what they call it. It's way up in Denver. I think it was like the Federal Theater, something like that. But for ages, they closed it as a theater, and for ages it's been a church has been in there. And so now that sold, and now they're reopening it as a theater, and it's like everybody's like, "Oh, it's a theater again! Amazing, amazing, amazing!" But it's a concert venue, and I'm going, "No, these places are movie theaters. You need to show movies in these places. We got to have a good repertory house in Denver. We just don't have it." So,
No, I remember growing up, we had, and I think it still exists. It's this place called the Music Hall in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And so we had our two theaters, which are now just one theater, and it's been bought out by this big, massive, I think it's Cinemagic now, but we had our two theaters that would do the first run movies, and either one or the other would get the movie. So that was the other thing too, is you might not be able to go see every movie you wanted at one of the two theaters, but the Music Hall would play a lot of indie flicks, and then in the summer they would do their summer movie series where they would show, like, I think I saw Taxi Driver there, Hidden Fortress, things like that. But I remember my friends and I was telling this story recently because somebody on Blue Sky had said, like, oh, what was like the craziest reaction you've seen in a movie theater? Well, my friends and I saw the movie Spanking the Monkey, Jeremy Davies. I think it was David O. Russell. Is that the guy who did like Fighter and all that stuff? He directed it.
Oh, okay. But yeah, I know the title. I haven't seen it.
So there's a scene in the movie, kind of spoiler alert, but there's a scene. The main character, he hooks up with his mother. Just that's what happens. And my friends and I, my friends started freaking out. They were just like, kind of like, like Ryan O'Neal and Tough Guys Don't Dance, like, oh no, oh God, no, please don't, no. And, there's a couple that was making out in front of us who just like stopped making out and just started laughing. And then like everybody else around us was laughing too. And I think, had that been like a normal, like a corporate theater, an usher would have come down and been like, guys, stop, you guys gonna cut it out,
yeah.
Everybody was getting a kick. I mean, I was kind of embarrassed at first. I was like, oh geez, they're really making a scene here. But everybody's getting, because I think everybody else was like, what is going on here? This is ridiculous. Like they, we're coming for this indie movie experience and we're getting this. This is, it's, you roll the dice with an indie movie. You never know what you're going to get. But it was like really kind of fun. But it's like that music hall experience. It was one of those things where, we would go see these indie movies, or we'd see, like they did a Kill Bill night, where they did both Kill Bill movies in one night. And it was one of those fun. I mean, it was the first place that I ever went to where we could get beer at a movie theater. They were the first ones that did that, But it's same thing to like you're talking about. Like that's where we saw Bobcat Goldthwait perform. You had concerts, you had like small stage performances there. It's been a decade. It's been over 10 years since I moved down here to Philadelphia. So I don't know if they're still showing movies like they used to, because that was always a big thing. I would look for their summer movie list and see like what movies I wanted to go see. And I wonder. I don't know if they're still doing that. That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, there is one place here in Denver, the C Music Center, or not Music Center, Movie Center, where they do some repertory showings, but that's kind of not the biggest focus. I mean, like I'm yearning for something in my town that's like the New Beverly Cinema out in LA, which is the one that Quentin Tarantino owns, and their whole schedule is just one night it's this classic movie, and another it's this, and another night it's this one you've never heard of before. And they do a lot of double features. Most of their nights are double features. I'm like, oh, it'd be so wonderful to have something like that around here, but we don't have it. Talking about those wonderful experiences you have in theaters where the crowd reactions or just funny things that happen. We're missing that a lot. I mean, so much of what we talk about now is the frustrations of being in the movie theater, or the people that turn on their phones, or they're talking too loud or things like that. But I'd love to have something where it's just this pure reaction or something just kind of funny that happens. The one story I always go back to in my mind with that, when I was in college, I had a friend, a professor, who told us this story about when he and his friends went to see Spartacus Okay. And so this is must have been a re-release or something like that, because they'd seen the movie before. They know how this is going to happen, but they said we went to the movies, this 3-hour long movie, just so we could be there at the end. And we purposely, there's a group of like 6 of us, something like that. We all sat in different places around the theater, just so when we got to the end of the movie where they have that scene and they're going, it's talking to all the slaves there. Who is Spartacus? And Kirk Douglas stands up and says, I'm Spartacus. And then another one stands up and goes, I'm Spartacus. And the other one, no, I'm Spartacus, all around the group of slaves. And so then when that scene played out, these guys all sitting out in various parts of the movie theater start standing up. No, I'm Spartacus. No, I'm Spartacus. I'm like, I would love to do that someday. They'd probably kick me out, but it's at the end of the movie, so that's okay.
Right, exactly. Sorry, I got the sirens going on behind me here. Yeah, I think that is so beautiful. I mean, and that's another piece. Like, I saw Lawrence of Arabia in the theater recently, but you don't really. Again, like imagine if you had a Spartacus showing. I mean, I would imagine like that other people probably think to do something like that, but it's like, what a fun movie to see in the theater. Like you said, it's 3 hours, so hopefully you get an intermission there at some point. But I mean, just to be there in the theater when people do that, like I would get such a kick out of it that I'd be telling everybody. I'd probably be on social media right away, being like, oh my god, was that Spartacus? And these guys were doing the I'm Spartacus thing. It was hilarious. Yeah. It's those moments are fun. And to be honest, I tend to go for like early morning, Saturday morning matinees where not a lot of people in the theater. So I guess I'm purposely missing out on those moments. But I don't trust people anymore. I saw Fantastic Four, The First Steps, and fortunately the movie was so good that people stopped talking. But people were talking at the beginning of it. And I was like, oh, am I gonna have to say something? Or
yeah. I had the same experience in Fantastic Four just earlier this week. There were this group of teenagers up there, and they were talking loudly and making silly comments and stuff like that. And I was like, "Geez, you morons!" But then at the same time, like I was talking about yesterday, I went to see The Naked Gun, and I was so thrilled that the theater was practically to capacity. This is on a Friday afternoon at 2:45. And, which for a movie like that, you want it because, it's like, yeah, I want to hear everybody laughing, everybody getting into this, so, and they did. Like I said, it's really funny. I recommend it.
Yeah, I definitely got to see that. It is funny, like with the comedies in particular, that used to be such a fun experience, go see a comedy. I mean, I remember seeing something like American Pie in the theater and just, people like losing it at the scene, like when, the character ends up drinking the laxative or whatever, taking the laxative, not realizing it, and he's running to the bathroom. Or I mean, obviously the scene with Jason Biggs, with the pie, obviously, and then the sequence after he's talking to Eugene Levy. It's just the discussion about it is just it's so ridiculous. But it's one of those things where it's like watching it alone at home. Yes, I can go on social media and talk about it, but when you're in a theater of like however many people and everybody's experiencing the same thing and going like, wow, I can't believe what I'm watching right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, jumping back to some of those 80s films we were talking about that kind of got us started here. Yeah. When I think about first time I saw things like Ghostbusters or Spaceballs or things like that, it's in the theater and everyone's laughing and it's just amazing.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's kind of a shame. It's but I think it's like you said, it's one of the things about the 80s that makes it such a I always think of like the 30s, 70s, and 90s as sort of like these sort of high-end decades for movies, but the 80s is a unique one because it has some really great high-end stuff, and then you've also the blockbusters. Again, it's like this interest that these directors had in making magic on the screen. I mean, someone like a Spielberg, he makes Jurassic Park, but he really doesn't make stuff like that in the 90s, like E.T. and Raiders of the Lost Ark and that kind of thing. And now it's like, too, when you get like a Ghostbuster, or even like Superman, I think, obviously that was 78, but, the new Superman is definitely a comic book movie, whereas like the 78 Superman, it was kind of in that realm of like Star Wars and Jaws, where these directors were trying to make magic on the screen, and it doesn't fit the same way, I don't think.
Yeah. I said it on that discussion on the Lambcast. This new Superman, it's a comic book movie. It's anything goes, and they go to some crazy directions, things that, Donner would have never done in the 78 original. That movie is inspired by a comic book, but it's not a comic book movie. And, for its time, I think that was the right choice. You wanted to make, create this sense of wonder that, oh my gosh, there's Superman, it's real, and now we're all used to, just we can do anything with computers and all that stuff. So we need to go a bit crazier when we bring Superman to the screen.
Exactly. Yeah. And it, like you said, it's like kind of like that's a great point too. Cause I think with Superman, even like the 89 Batman, or like the 89 Punisher, even, it was almost like the people making these movies, they didn't want to make comic book movies. They wanted to make movies that were based off of comic books. And, I think I don't know where you think it would start. Like maybe with Sam Raimi with the Spider-Man movies, but maybe too, like with Iron Man, there's a point where it's like, no, these are, cause I would say even like the Dark Knight movies, the Christian Bale, Christopher Nolan movies, they aren't really comic book movies in that sense. It's almost like maybe Iron Man is what starts it, where Kevin Feige, he was a fan of the comics and said, I want to make these like the comics that, and of course DC was like, well, everybody was like, well, we got to follow the money. We can't, we're going to get swept under by Kevin Feige's MCU if we don't make them the same way.
Yeah, I mean, and with the MCU, I think they did it in the right way. I mean, if you look back in the stuff about what Donner did with Superman, his rallying cry, his motto through the making of that movie was verisimilitude.
Yeah,
we want to make this believable. This is Superman in the real world. This was really happening, type of thing. And I think the way that Feige approached things with the MCU, when you look at like the first film, Iron Man, okay, I think that basic kind of spirit, that verisimilitude, is still there. You look at that film and it's not overly fantastical. It could still be going, oh yeah, this is in our world. And then gradually, as we go through the other films, Incredible Hulk, we bring in Thor, we bring in, the Captain America stuff with the Red Skull and all that kind of stuff. We're gradually bringing in this more fantastical element, so that by the time we get to the Avengers, which is only like the 5th or 6th film in the series, I don't remember.
Yeah.
But by the time we get there, we're perfectly okay with giant flying space lizards going through New York City,
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And, to that point with DC, they had a mindset of like, well, Superman and Batman, that's what those are the ones that we use to make movies. And that's good enough for us, and then suddenly with the Avengers, when that happens, they're like, oh, geez, I guess we do need to make a Wonder Woman movie, or we need to make a, whatever, Flash, all those other things. And it was almost like they were caught flat-footed there. And I remember growing up, I didn't even realize it was. I discovered that Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman were comics after the fact. I knew them as Adam West, Christopher Reeve, and Linda Carter. But it is interesting that I wonder, because it's going to be interesting with James Gunn how he does this, because DC for a while did really well by just doing Batman and Superman, and that's what we stick with. And I should say really well. You could say Superman 4 maybe and things like that, maybe not always really well, but now James Gunn is creating a different kind of DC movie, and so it's like you really can't even compare maybe that new Superman with the Donner films.
No, yeah, I mean, it's a completely different kind of movie, but I enjoyed it. So
yeah, I had a lot of fun with it too. So well, it'll be interesting to see where it goes. But yeah, I guess we'll kind of transition back to the other end of the spectrum here.
The far other end of the spectrum,
exactly. Yes. Now, as we get in on here on Malibu Express, I guess my first question is, what is your experience with Sidaris films?
Well, I've seen most of them. Many years ago, I was the building I worked in was right across the street from a Walmart, and I went in there one morning to get my my lunch for the day. And if I had a little time, I'd always walk by where the DVDs were and things like that. They always have the $5 bin and things like that. And one day sitting there was the set of all the Sidaris movies. I was like, that's the best $12 I've ever spent. It's like. So, but I mean, my history with it, I mean, my first exposure was Malibu Express. Like I said, I remember it showing up on cable a lot. I don't think I ever got to watch it in its entirety back then because, like we said, it was on late night TV. It's the type of movie that mom and dad would have looked at you sideways had you been watching. So, I saw bits and pieces there, but never got to see the whole thing until my adult life. And I think it's, we'll dig into it here for sure. I don't think Sidaris is quite hip to the formula that works for him yet at this point. We're going to see that develop as he moves on with his Lethal Ladies series or whatever you want to call it. But there's hints of it here. It's you look at Malibu Express, and yes, they include it in the series these days, but you kind of look at it like it's a prototype almost. They're still kind of working on the formula here.
Yeah, and I think there's maybe like things from like the 70s when he was making movies, because obviously this is a remake of his movie Stacy from like 73. But I think there's elements in this movie like the Buffingtons, there's sort of these bumpkins who
yes,
every once in a while they forced Cody Abilene into a race against them, and they almost kind of they bog down the film a bit, and he never uses anything like these again. So that part of the paradigm goes away. But then like the bumbling crooks, so we have this like trio: Matthew, Mark, and Luke, I think, or Matthew, Luke, and John.
Matthew, I got to tell you a story about that.
Yes.
Finish your point first.
Please. Oh no, I was gonna say I think that's one thing. He does have the bumbling crooks. I think it's like something John Cancino, I can't remember the name, but there's a couple guys that he has in multiple movies that are kind of these bumbling assassins who usually get blown up or something as the movie goes on.
Yeah, no, I had totally forgotten about the fact that we had three henchmen named Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Which of course for those of you that are not hip to it, it's a biblical reference. But when I was in college, I had a friend and his name was Luke. And he was one of four brothers, and they were Matthew, Mark, Luke, and Fred.
That's great.
In fairness, Fred was the first one. He was, like a junior or something like that. But I always thought, I love telling people that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and Fred.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's funny. The way I've heard the way I got my name Matthew was that my parents, they had especially my dad was a little bit old. He was in his mid 20s, and he had friends that were a little bit older than him who already had kids, and they all said, if we have a boy, we're going to name him Matthew, and they all had daughters. And so it was one of those things where like, oh, well, if we have a boy, we'll name him Matthew. And I was like the first one out of his friends to have a son, or, so that's how I ended up with Matthew, so it wasn't a biblical one in my case. It was more like, that sounds like a great name. And none of you can actually use it because you've all got daughters. I mean, I guess they could have named their daughters Matthew as well, but yeah, they decided not to.
Now, real quick, while we're still on the subject of kind of, our background with Sidaris and leading up to this more famous series and things like that, there is a film in between the one that Malibu Express is a remake of, Stacy, and Malibu Express, which often gets ignored in the mix too. It's not considered a part of the series, but it's kind of another example of like a prototype here, and that's the movie Seven,
right,
from 1979. Have you seen that one?
No, I haven't seen that one yet. I've been meaning to, because I think is it Hard Ticket to Hawaii that we get posters of it on the walls?
I think you might be right. Yeah. And I mean, it's it kind of it's got some of the same things. This one stars William Smith, which I mean that's worth the price of admission right there. Right. But and I've got the DVD. Maybe I'll have to because I've watched it and it's not like I'm jonesing to watch it again. Maybe I'll have to be generous and share it with you here. But I picked it up on a Kino Lorber sale a couple of years ago. But it's an interesting to watch too, kind of looking at where Sidaris was going to go. It's another case where you go, the hints are there, but he's not totally got his formula set here. I mean, one of the key things about I think both that one and Malibu Express that, you know, sets them apart from the other ones is that the central focus is the male character. Right. So, you know, that's definitely, you know, not the way the rest of the series goes.
No, well, because what happens is that, you know, Malibu Express, obviously it's you know, Darby Hinton as Colby Aveline. So then, you know, Hard Ticket to Hawaii, I think he was thinking like, okay, well Ron Moss can be my next, you know, Darby Hinton. He can be, because I don't know if Darby Hinton, maybe because he did a lot of TV work after Malibu Express, if maybe he just said, I don't want to do these kind of movies anymore. I just want to, you know, try to get a career in TV. He was a soap opera star too. I think he did Days, I think. After Malibu Express. Yeah, I think that was the soap opera.
It always threw me, his name, because again, as a teenager looking through the TV guide, right, and you see the listing of the movies, and you know, you knew from having seen bits and pieces on late night cable that this was a movie where there were a lot of very pretty ladies in it and all that kind of stuff. And you'd see the credit listing and it'd say Darby Hinton. Right. I go, well, which girl is Darby Hinton? Right. Because it's, I mean, I'm not trying to insult the man, but the name does sound like what you would expect as a Playboy playmate, you know, like, you know, Playmate of the Month, Darby Hinton. It right. sounds like that type of name. Right. And knowing that half the cast is Playboy models, you know, that I mean, that was a natural assumption to make.
Yeah, no, and you know, you don't have to IMDb like you do now, where you just, you know, go on there and hopefully they have a picture. I mean, you also the movies that we do a lot here on the direct to video connoisseur, a lot of them are the gray silhouette for the names. But you know, most of the time you get a picture and you go, okay, that's the person. Yeah, that's a great point too. I never, you know, because it makes a lot of sense that you'd be like, yeah, who's Darby Hinton? Because I think when I watched it, because I hadn't seen Malibu Express until during the pandemic, during COVID, I did a marathon of all of them when they were on Tubi. So I had seen other ones before. Like a lot of times there would be this block of movies after Roadhouse on TBS late at night, you know, when they're like the movies for guys who like movies kind of block or whatever. Right. And so if Roadhouse was over, then you'd get like a Julie Strain, Bruce Penhall, you know, one of the later ones, like Dallas Connection or something like that. And you know, a lot of times I would, you know, this was like early 2000s where I was, you know, I'd maybe go to the bars with some friends and come back and, you know, maybe, you know, pass out during Roadhouse and wake up in the middle of, you know, what are these? Well, the room's spinning and all of that kind of stuff. But I had seen some of those and I was like, why don't I just watch them all? And so that's, you know, that's when I watched Malibu Express. And like you said, it doesn't quite fit the model of the other ones that come later. But like you said, you get some of these like pieces that he starts using, like the secret agents and, you know, like the use of gadgets. He really loves gadgets in his movies too.
Yeah. Cars, gadgets, women who are willing to take their clothes off. Yeah, that's the formula.
Yeah. Now, one thing I was wondering what your thoughts were on this, because when you get into Hard Ticket to Hawaii, where you know, he's got Ron Moss in that role, and in that one you have two monogamous couples. Really, you have Ron Moss with Dona Speir, and then I'm drawing a blank on the name. You know, Harold Diamond, and I'm drawing a blank on the actor who starred opposite. Because
are you talking the other lady?
Yeah, the other lady. Yeah.
Is it
Edie something, right? I think it was Edie.
Oh, Edie is the singer. Cynthia Brimhall.
Cynthia Brimhall. Yeah. That's it, exactly. Yeah, Cynthia. They were kind of paired off as couples, and I wonder. You know, 87 is still a little early, but I think, I don't know if maybe like the AIDS epidemic had gotten to the point where I don't know if that was in his mind when he did that, because it seems like after this movie, all the other ones, you have more of these monogamous couples where you still get the steamy love scenes. I guess the closest thing to a non-monogamous might be when in Dallas Connection, when Bruce Penhall hooks up with Julie K. Smith, which apparently caused issues in Bruce Penhall's marriage. He didn't do another one of those movies. He tried to sell it to his wife as, oh, you know, we're just getting into the scene. We're just really, you know, we're really going for it as actors. And she was like, nope, not buying it. And that was it. We never saw Bruce Penhall in another one of those movies.
Yeah. I mean, those movies, I mean, they're fun. There's so much, you know, cheese to them. There's, you know, there's a certain charm in, you know, finding every opportunity to blow things up, you know, to have the scantily clad people, you know, every now and then you see a quote unquote name shoehorned into things, you know, folks like Pat Morita, Eric Estrada show up in some of these, you know, so Yeah, I mean it's a series that delivers as it goes. I will say I think Hard Ticket to Hawaii is the peak.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just so much wonderful craziness in Hard Ticket to Hawaii. But
Yeah, there is. It's such a great one. And I think, I think the one thing Sidaris maybe sees in Hard Ticket to Hawaii is, Ron Moss isn't really delivering the way Darby Hinton did. And so then he brings in another guy, I can't remember the other guy's name, who plays another Abilene in Picasso Trigger. And that guy doesn't really work out well. And he looks at it and says, well, Dona Speir has been in these so far, and she seems to be doing a pretty good job. Why don't we just center them around her? And you get kind of the first ever woman-led action franchise in a way when she takes over the franchise with Savage Beach, which is a fascinating thing too, because you would say like a Sidaris movie, it's exploitation, but it in a way you also get some kind of groundbreaking stuff there.
yeah, I mean, it's interesting as you watch these films because, I mean, let's be honest, the women are not cast for their acting abilities. Most of these folks are people that have been, centerfold models, things like that. Okay. But as you watch these films, they very much take, how should I say, they're the ones that are much more intriguing on screen than the male characters. And actually almost, I mean, even though all of these movies have ample time where, that is spent on dwelling on these women taking their clothes off, but it almost eventually starts to feel like the men are more the cheesecake as things go on, because you do also get, I mean, credit where credit is due. Sidaris certainly gives plenty of opportunities for the men to show off their physiques and such in all these movies as well. But it's almost feels like they're more the cheesecake as things go on, because the women actually have the meatier roles as things go.
Well, because that's a great point when you think of just like the evolution of the Abilene character, is that, when we get into Savage Beach, it's a Playboy Playgirl, I should say, not Playboy, Playgirl centerfold. What is it, Shane? What is this? Oh, Michael Shane, actually. The character name is Shane Abilene, but the actor is Michael Shane. And really, he's just there to be a himbo, and then also to kind of further the whole the Abilene who can't shoot straight, right? So he can't shoot his gun properly. Those are the two things that he does, right? He just, he takes off his shirt, wears a Speedo, and doesn't shoot well.
Those Abilene boys, they can't shoot worth a darn.
Exactly. Well, maybe that's a good way we'll get stuck in on this movie here on Savage Beach, because that's really where the movie starts, right? Well, actually, the movie starts with some really great computer technology, right? Where
oh my gosh, yeah. Don't you love it when they're like trying to go, look how high tech we are, and it's just so low tech.
It's amazing because, like, we think of computers. It's funny, like that was 85, which I think my school I think got computers a couple years later, the Apple IIe.
Oh yeah.
And so we would play, Oregon Trail stuff. The thing I always remember about Oregon Trail was that our teachers were older. They were all born like the 30s and 40s. Actually, probably more like 20s and 30s. They had this idea of like, following the directions, right? Doing everything the way you're supposed to. Whereas with computers, you got to think outside the box. And one of the things I remember with Oregon Trail is that because none of us could play it, none of us knew how to do it. It was just too difficult. We would name the family after other people in the class. And then when they would die, it was like a thing like, haha, you just died of dysentery. It's like, well, you died over in the river, And our teachers got so mad. But in a way, we were understanding computers better, because it's like, that's what you need to do with computers. So it was always kind of a funny thing. I always got a kick out of that.
Well, and let's not draw a false comparison here, because Oregon Trail is way higher res graphics than what we've got in this screen. This is low res. This is the stuff that like I was doing in my 4th grade class in, like 1981. This is not high tech graphics at all. But I mean, you got to figure this, Sidaris is saving on having to hire someplace to do, the credits. He just does them on the computer they've got lying around, so.
Yeah, no, it works out perfect. And I think about Superman 3 comes out in 1983, which is, Richard Pryor's character takes a computer course and, suddenly is like, making all this money and becoming this genius. I mean, back then at that time, it was a way, it was a a road that you could follow for decent money. I think my father-in-law did that actually. Like he had, I think he got laid off from a job that he had for like over 10 years, and he just started doing computers. So he's like one of the only. I mean, he's like 80 now. I think he's like 80, or actually he's gonna be 82 this year, and yet he knows how to use computers, and he can use his iPhone, stuff like that. He's not like your classic older person needing to be told how to use their phone and stuff, which is kind of funny. But somebody Sidaris might have known somebody who was just messing around with like learning computer code or something like that, and it's like, oh, what can you do with computer code? Well, check it out. I can make the graphic change colors on the screen here.
Superman 3, I mean, I always remember a moment in that where it's like, boy, they really are pulling the wool over your eyes when it comes to computer stuff, because there's a moment where Richard Pryor's Gus Gorman is there typing on his computer, and he's like amazing. He types stuff and all this stuff flashes on the screen. He's like, oh, look what I did. Look what I did. And again, I'm going back to like what I learned in 3rd, 4th grade and such in computer class at school. You can see he types the word list and then it all lists out. I mean, it's the easiest command in BASIC. And I'm like, I can do that, come on.
Right.
Anyway,
it was one of those things I remember when computers started to get more advanced, and you couldn't just do like the MS DOS kind of, the DOS thing where you could just type in, controls, command and, all that kind of stuff. It was like you actually had to learn how to like, do things. But it is kind of funny because like younger people, I think they're used to the computer being able to do everything for them. And so it's like our age core, we can at least troubleshoot things a little bit better because we you had to do so much troubleshooting in the past.
Yeah. Yeah. I learned a little BASIC. I learned a little COBOL, I think. Yeah, I
remember doing BASIC in high school, and then we did C++ was the other one we did. And then in college, I was an engineering major for a year until I switched to anthropology. But in that year, I was doing like assembly code language, which was just I remember going to University of Maine. Just a quick aside, it was the winters there. It gets dark at like 3:30, 4 p.m. And so I remember going to that lab when it was already dark out and having to like do coding and stuff. Like I was just like, man, I needed like a rum and Coke and some pizza from the union and just quite a time. But yeah, so we get our opening credit sequence, and then we get our introduction to Cody Abilene at the shooting range, and that's where we find out that he can't shoot a moving target, but he's also this very charismatic figure. And the way they set it up like it's almost like a spoof on Dirty Harry, right? Where Dirty Harry, Clint Eastwood, like he just blows apart the whole target, paper, and here he's just missing it the whole time.
And he keeps his gun in a cowhide briefcase.
Right, in case you didn't know he was from Texas, which the Texas thing comes up a lot as well. Exactly. Yeah, and then I mean, we get kind of a sense of what this movie is going to be about right away, because he goes to a racetrack, which I was wondering what your thoughts were. Is this the racetrack that Bobby Brady was driving on in A Very Brady Christmas when he was?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't look at it that closely. It might be.
Right.
I always remember. I mean, I love the original Brady Bunch. I've practically got all those episodes memorized. But it's always funny when I think back in my mind. Okay, what happened to all the Brady kids in the lore of the Brady Bunch? Yeah. Bobby Brady became a race car driver, and I think he married Martha Quinn. I think his wife was played by Martha Quinn. If I
right, because he broke his back in he had an accident, broke his back on the Brady's TV show. Stevie was like calling the race actually, and had to like abandon her post to go down and see if he was okay. And he stood when he did his bows, I think, on the Brady's. Sorry, Martha Quinn. The funny thing about that is the continuity as well. The fact that like, Brady Girls Get Married, they use the same husbands in Brady Girls Get Married in A Very Brady Christmas, which, I guess the only thing that wasn't continuity was Cindy Brady, the actor was played Susan Olsen. She was getting married. She couldn't do A Very Brady Christmas. So that's the only, the one piece of continuity that we don't get there.
Well, yeah, there's a couple times when some have been, I think all 3 girls have been swapped out at different times because they didn't want to or couldn't, famously Eve Plum didn't do the comedy variety show. Right. What did they call it? The Brady Bunch Hour. Yes. And there's a actress. Oh, what's her name? Jerry Reichel is like famous as Fake Jan. I think she even goes out and does events as Fake Jan, awesome. And I think Maureen McCormick also sat out one of the later series or something like that. But yeah,
because I remember So I was out on the Exploding Helicopter podcast recently where we were watching the Bigfoot movie that pitted Danny Bonaducci against Barry Williams. And yeah, in England, they didn't have Partridge Family or Brady. So he wanted to know, like, he wanted me to kind of tell everybody what these shows were about. And I looked into it some, and I didn't realize that the Brady Hour, the Variety Hour, was pitched to the Partridge Family first.
Oh,
Yeah, but they really had no connection to the show because the show was so centered on David Cassidy's character that when it ended, it's like Susan Day's like, I got to, I want to be as far from the Partridge Family as possible. But then, other people like David Cassidy was like, I don't want to do this. I'm trying to, be a real actor. I don't want to be on this show. And so the Bradys were like, well, sure, we'll do it. We don't, we don't have anything else going on.
That Brady Bunch Hour was a Sid and Marty Krofft production, which they're the guys that did Land of the Lost and Sigmund and the Sea Monsters and H.R. Puffin stuff, all that cool stuff.
Oh, that's so amazing. Yeah, that Variety Hour, it's funny because, for myself, kind of being younger, I didn't grow up in it. So it was more like channels like VH1 and stuff like that would show them in the 90s later.
Yeah.
And, like my wife, she's a little bit older than me. I shouldn't be saying that on here, but she is, she's kind of between our two ages. But she also kind of gets a kick out of them. But I know like they're kind of this schmaltzy thing, like the Captain and Tennille, right? All those kinds of things. Like, a lot of people see them and just cringe,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I grew up on that stuff. Donnie and Marie. I mean, all that.
Yeah, you gotta love that. Yeah. But so I guess so we set the racetrack and we find out kind of what his deal is because he's like, we know he's a private detective, but also he's hooking up with a lot of women, and he hooks up with the first woman, a race car driver whose name is Julie Knockers, or
with an H.
with an H. So no, June Knockers. Sorry, June Knockers. With an H. And so Linda Wiesmeyer, who had kind of a career. She was also in she did a few movies around this time. But so he hooks up with her, and then they see a photographer out there. So we're kind of getting introduced to some people, and then he drives off in a DeLorean 3 months before Back to the Future comes out.
Oh yeah. You got the cool spaceship like doors there stuff. I got to mention too, the other guys on the racetrack. What's with the guy with the shoe hat? I mean, this one guy was wearing this. I guess it's essentially a ball cap, but it's made to look like a Converse red high top, just plunked on his head. I don't know. I lived through 1985. I don't think that was ever cool. I don't think those were quite the rage that Sidaris wants them to be here.
Exactly. Yeah. You get a sense with some of these that Sidaris just throwing things together here. But yeah, it's always I mean, again, just some of the plot points that happen in this movie. He's just kind of throwing everything into this, which we'll kind of see. I mean, the racetrack it's an interesting introduction to the movie because it gives you a good sense of who the character is, but it gives you a sense of some of the crazy stuff that Sidaris is willing to do.
Oh. I mean, it gives you a sense of what the main focus of this movie is going to be with the shot where Cody drives away, okay, and the two ladies are there watching him pull away, and the camera pans over, like he's sitting in the car, says goodbye, waves, drives off, camera pans away over, and the two girls are talking, and we're not focused on their faces,
right?
We're focused on their rear ends.
Yes.
I mean, that is all that's in this frame here. Two tushes right there in the frame. And I mean, if you weren't sure what kind of movie you were in for, that tells you right there.
Exactly right. If you're in mixed company, if you got to turn it off, that's probably the time you're going to do it. Exactly. Yeah. Now, if it's not this time, it's the next scene coming up where he's we find out what Malibu Express is, and it's the yacht that he has with this big painting door that's a train.
This is like the weirdest thing in the movie because he's got this like doorway on the dock, right. Which, I mean, like, what is the purpose of this? Is it, that's not security at all. If that's what the intention is, that's not keeping anybody out. But it's this painting of a caboose, the back end of a caboose, and it says Malibu Express. And he tells this story at one point about, my dad and I did this, because my grandma was killed by a train. And it's like, wait a minute, your grandma was killed by a train, so you have a picture of a train there? I mean, that's just morbid.
Exactly. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And then we also find out too that his dad started the yacht club, and that's why they're they're letting him get away with doing this, and so but it is kind of funny how he's like, yeah, the grandmother died by a train. I guess it's kind of, Sidaris dark humor, I guess. Yeah, exactly. But
Well, and that's the thing. I don't know. Are we supposed to like feel sorry for him? Is this supposed to come up later on? Like, oh, he's got this phobia of trains because grandma was killed by a train or something like that. That would have made more sense than putting a giant painting of a train up by your boat.
exactly, because this movie doesn't really have anything like that. I think it was dark humor, but it's kind of a weird way to do it. And the other thing too is that when he goes through the door, you just see him on the other side walking on the boat, because it's not really, it's just like a flat painting that you walk through.
Just a panel. Yeah.
It just makes for a very interesting look there. And then when he gets inside, two of his neighbors on another boat show up in bikinis, and they immediately, he takes a shower first, and then they show up while he's drying himself off. And
the shower is, it gives another example of how, Sidaris at least gives moments where he has his male stars also disrobing and giving a little eye candy for the female viewers,
Exactly. So after they do their thing, after they have their tryst, we find out kind of what the story is, what the basic plot here is that so there's a secret agent who's actually the yacht guy that was telling Cody he needs to get rid of his big door. He calls up Special Agent Sybil Danning and says, hey, our computer secrets are being sold out, and we think it might be linked to this woman, was it Anita Chamberlain, I guess, or Lady Chamberlain, they called her?
Lady Lillian Chamberlain.
Right. Lady Lilia, that's right, because Anita's the niece-in-law, I guess. I don't know if that's what you would
Yeah, I think that's right.
The nephew's wife. But they say, we want you to, you can't get on the inside, Sybil Danning, because Lillian Chamberlain, and so it'll be too obvious. But we need someone on the inside, and we think we know the person. It's Cody Abilene, the private detective we were just talking to, joking around with a bit, and so they schedule for him to go see Sybil Danning at her place so she can tell him the score about like what we need you to do for this job. And of course, he shows up with this beautiful red dress. They wear the red dress and immediately hook up. So he's immediately hooking up with Sybil Danning.
How does he know her size? Right, okay, exactly. First of all, from what we know, he's never met her before. Right. Now, granted, I don't know that, in most of her movies, Sybil Danning doesn't seem to care much about size because she's often wearing garments that are probably a little too small for her intentionally. That's part of the way it works with Sybil Danning. But yeah, in this case, it's going, it seems to fit her just fine. And Sybil Danning is, let's just say she's got some attributes that, I think if you're going to buy a dress that fits, you need to know in advance. So Cody's pretty good about guessing here, I guess.
Yeah, he does a great job. And, this is at this point, if you count the two neighbors as two women, that he hooks up with both of them, that this is number 4. This is lady number 4 so far. And we're only like 20 minutes into the movie that he's...
Oh, and you know what we didn't talk about here with the two neighbors, Faye and May.
Oh, Faye and May, yes.
Okay. And, not only, Cody, gets with them, but they also take a shower.
Right.
They take a shower together.
Yes.
Which, there's a tiny little shower on the boat. It's like... it's not like it's convenient. They're like struggling, but hey, we got to have the two ladies take a shower together. There's lots of showers in this movie. Did you notice that?
Yes, there are. Yes.
Sidaris loves showers. Everybody in this movie takes multiple showers.
Yes, they're everywhere. Exactly. Because we get, there's tons of different scenes with that. Because I guess, so our next scene, we don't get one yet. And the next scene, we get a lay of the land of the house. So Lady Chamberlain's house, which is in Bel Air, so we get to see our main character, Darby, he loses a race to the Buffingtons, so he takes his DeLorean into the shop to get looked at. And
the Buffingtons.
The Buffingtons, right.
Spot, yeah.
Yeah, and we found out that they were using nitrous oxide, which is some sort of like or yellow liquid with dry ice or something on it, smoking yellow, but so that's our first introduction to the Buffingtons. He loses the race to them, and he takes
you got to give Sidaris a little credit here. At least they're not your typical, just ultra stupid redneck characters. They at least have a little bit of cleverness that they're able to come up with this nitrous oxide thing,
Exactly. He doesn't realize that they were using the nitrous, but he feels like there was something not right about his DeLorean, so he has it taken to the shop. And then his dad's car, which is like an Oldsmobile, like I don't know, was a Forenza or whatever, an older model, that's being worked on as well. So they give him this old Ford, which he's got to drive this Ford into Bel Air, which doesn't look great going in there. When he gets there, Brett Baxter Clark as only Brett Clark. He's Shane, the chauffeur, who also does all kinds of other stuff. He's like a butler and all that stuff. He shows him in.
Does he ever do lots of other stuff?
He does lots of other stuff. Well, right.
With all the members of the family. Yeah.
Exactly. Because after he shows Darby, or he shows Cody in, we immediately see him hooking up with her. Lady Chamberlain's niece's wife, Anita Chamberlain, and they are hooking up right away. They're just kind of going for it, and so there's that piece there, and then we see the daughter come down, Liza Chamberlain, and there's a scene, another shower scene, right, where Shane, at first it looks like he's assaulting her, but then they kind of just they're into it. They have sex. Well, he's got a camera set up off to the side, is taking pictures of them, and he's like, "Oh, I got your picture in here," and she's like,
"How is he? How's he triggering that camera? Right. There's nothing on there that indicates how he's actually causing it to take a picture. I mean, it's kind of like I've always had that trouble with Spider-Man, because you always see like Spider-Man. Peter Parker sets up a camera, on like a telephone pole or something like that with his webs holding it there and stuff like that. But they never like actually show how he actually triggers the camera to take the picture.
Right. Well, and also too, if you've got it just sitting there, it's hard enough to like set the timer and then go get into position and have it all be shaped, but here, and I mean, beyond, I guess also the fact that it's the shower. So there's like steam and everything probably getting into everything.
Exactly. The lens would be all fogged up.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
and then when we see the actual pictures that, it's good composition. They're not foggy and all that. I mean, exactly. Shane is a heck of a photographer when he just sets the camera down on the bathroom counter.
Right, exactly. Now we get Cody goes out for the night after having dinner. So they'll have dinner. Cody goes out for the night to meet a police officer friend of his. So this is I think it's Beverly, right? Was that her name?
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
And they go to a gym, and that's where they meet two bodybuilders who are showing off. This is Luke and Mark, of the two. We're going to find out who they are later. And they're kind of showing off, and they're kind of trying to, almost like trying to steal Beverly away from them, which they don't realize, all the charisma and everything that Cody's bringing to the table here, that these two bodybuilder guys aren't going to take her. But they don't have sex yet because she has to go to work. So put a pin in Beverly. I shouldn't say put a pin in, but put a pin in the relationship between him and Beverly, because we'll come back to that later.
Right.
But the next day, we find out that Liza's car's in the shop, and that she doesn't want Shane to take her to Palm Springs, where she's got to go for a business deal, because obviously the night before she's still upset with him about that. So he drives her to this computer guy, John, I think his name is, right? John Stewart or something. John, or I can't remember what the character's name is, but yeah, he's got some kind of computer startup or something. We don't know exactly what the deal is, but that's when we meet our bodybuilder guys again, along with Art Matrano.
Art Matrano from the Police Academy series.
So, yeah, I mean, what a great addition. I mean, I guess, he wouldn't have been at the gym with them earlier because he's not a bodybuilder of any sort. But, he's got the great accent, which is what you want.
Oh, Matrano is fun. I mean, I've seen him pop up in a couple of other movies, recently, as I'm just going through different things, and I was like, oh yeah, look, there's Mauser. He's in Police Academy 2 and 3. He's the Harris substitute, basically, for those two movies, because G.W. Bailey was Captain Harris through most of the series, but he didn't come back for 2, which is actually same year as this, 85, Police Academy 2. So this same year, Art Matrano is playing Mauser, and then he plays him again in Police Academy 3. And though his character in that, he falls to the same types of gimmicks that Harris does. He's the one that Mahoney's always pranking and things like that. But Mauser is kind of portrayed more as a butt kisser through the series, and that's kind of his main thing, that he's just always kissing up to whoever the higher ups are and stuff like that. But yeah, he only showed up in 2 of those Police Academy movies, though.
Oh, and the other funny thing about Matrano is that he was in the remake of Breathless that came out in '83.
Oh yeah, I watched that recently. That's the other one I saw him in. Yeah.
Yeah, he plays a character named Birnbaum, which kind of funny fact. Birnbaum in German is what my last name is. So it's last name
Oh,
Poirier is French for pear tree. Birnbaum is German for pear tree. So just a kind of a
ah,
funny fact there. But
okay.
yeah. I think Matrano would have been a pretty good. I mean, he worked with Matrano on Seven, I believe. So that might have been how he was able to get him in this movie, with him doing the Police Academy. Because Police Academies, those were bigger movies at that time. So I mean, eventually they go kind of further down the list. But and you look at his roles. I
I
mean,
mean, the first Police Academy was a huge hit.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So he would have been a pretty good get, but I think he also would have been someone that Sidaris knew, so he got in this role. So so we meet them. They show up. They kind of sexually harass Liza in this guy's office, this guy John's office. Cody doesn't really like the look of them, and he's like, "Let's get out of here." And she's like, "Well, no, I got to stay and do business." So he leaves, and John sends our trio, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, to essentially beat the crap out of him, blow up his car, whatever it is that they do. And so when they corner him, he looks like he's going to be able to defeat them because he kicks one of them in the head, gives the other one a karate chop or whatever, kind of knocks the two bodybuilder guys out, and then he goes to punch Matrano in the stomach and it hits his gun and it hurts his hand, and so they beat him up, blow up his car. So he needs a new car. Fortunately, he finds a garage that happens to be run by a beautiful woman. So this is woman number 5
in the middle of the desert.
middle of the desert, right?
It's just his car gets messed up,
Yeah.
and he just walks off across the desert, and there's just this used car lot there that happens to be run by a very beautiful woman. And what's he say? He says, I wrote it down. Oh, he asks her for the fastest thing on the lot,
Right.
and she says, "I'm the fastest thing on this lot."
Exactly. And there's almost a sense too, because obviously he wouldn't have had any money, so he essentially, by having sex with her, that's how he gets the car. Is through that.
Well, and then later on too, because he does all those little narration things. We've got the little like you expect in an old cop movie where the cop or the private eye is doing narration, and he does narration, and right after this there's a little narration thing, and he claims that he was raped in the desert.
Right, exactly.
Like implying that this woman just jumped him, and that, and I'm thinking that's not what happened.
Right, exactly. Yeah, no, it sounded like you were a willing participant there, Mister Abilene. Yeah. So when he gets back, so I guess he decides he's going to start following Brett Baxter Clark. Right, he kind of realizes that Brett's the one. The other thing too is that we find out that Brett is into some loan sharks or something for like 30 grand, and so his plan is to blackmail some of the members of the family, of the Chamberlain family, and he's going to start with the nephew, Stuart Chamberlain. And one of the deals is, as a limo driver, he takes Stuart Chamberlain to a gay bar where Stuart Chamberlain dresses up. He goes in drag to the bar, and he thinks
Screaming Cockatoo.
That's right. I forgot about the name. The Screaming Cockatoo. Yeah.
Which I was like, again, going back to Police Academy. I mean, that's up there with the Blue Oyster Bar when it comes to names. Yeah,
yeah, it's perfect. And so, Brett Clark, he thinks, okay, I'm gonna blackmail Stewart, and Stewart's like, I don't care. You're not gonna blackmail me. I don't, do whatever you want. It doesn't matter to me. And he goes into the club, but Abilene takes all of this stuff down. He kind of knows everything that's happening. And then I guess there's a party, right? Because we find out about this party because Stewart invites his boyfriend to the party, and so this party is supposed to be like kind of a fact finding thing, I guess, where all the players are going to be there, and Cody's hopefully going to figure things out, and Sybil Danning shows up as his date in probably the best like Sidaris fancy party dress that I think Sybil Danning could wear, where it's like kind of long flowy skirt kind of thing, but the top is just sort of like a couple bands across her breast.
I mean, it never ceases to amaze me how some of these dresses stay on Sybil Danning, not just in this movie, but in other movies. I mean, they look like they're hanging on for dear life. Right. Exactly. What they do with the party, I want to mention, and this character comes into the mix a little bit as it go on, but we meet the maid,
yes, Maid Marian.
Maid Marian, which is like, okay, come on, let's be a little more original with the name here. But this is another familiar face because I was going, I know this person, and then I realized this is Robin Hilton, who is most famous, at least in my mind, for playing the secretary, the governor's secretary in Blazing Saddles.
Oh,
With
right.
Mel Brooks. Yeah.
Interesting, because that's a second Mel Brooks connection. Because Matrano was in History of the World Part 1, I think. Right? Was he?
Oh, you might be right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. We get these. Yeah, I knew I recognized her from somewhere. That makes plenty of sense that she was in it. Because I didn't realize too she's older, so I guess that kind of makes sense that she would be in Blazing Saddles.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow, that's great. She also did like some biker movies. It looks like it stuff like that, kind of in the '70s. She was an episode of Policewoman, which is great, But she doesn't do anything after this, which is interesting. This was her first thing in 8 years, so she hadn't done anything since the Starsky and Hutch episode, and then she doesn't do anything after this. I'm not sure why. You never know with in the 80s and 90s, I think, especially with actors where they, because the pay and stuff like that probably just wasn't great, and it's like there's a certain point where you just settle down and just do something else. You just decide. I know when we did American Ninja, right? We had Judy Aronson, who
Right.
after a stint where she did a few movies, she just decided to open her own clothing store, I think, or something like that. And that
Yeah.
she acts a little bit now, but that was kind of it. So the other thing at the party is that the loan shark guy is there because he controls the catering company, and so it's funny because he controls the loan shark guy controls the catering company, but also that John character with the computer company, he's got people embedded in there as well. Like Maid Marian is on his payroll, and so everybody's sort of like talking to each other and doing all of this stuff. And at one point, Brett Baxter Clark he tries to get Stewart to pay the money again, and Stewart, says no, hangs up the phone on him. And then the loan shark gets at him and threatens to cut him if he doesn't pay up. And so he's like, okay, I'll figure it out, or something like that. The party ends, the party wraps up, and then Brett Baxter Clark, he's kind of going through his all of the memorabilia he's got for his different blackmail schemes, and somebody comes in and kills him. But it's like it's not an easy death for him. He gets stabbed, he gets shot. He somehow manages to carry a TV out the door, which he's watching Regis and Joy Philbin.
Yeah. And from what I could tell, it's not like they just randomly went with what was on TV. That was shot for this movie. So Regis. I don't know if he's buddies with Sidaris. I know Sidaris was a TV guy before he started making movies. I think he used to direct like sports TV and things like that. So, I mean, it would make sense that he might have known Regis Philbin through some other connections at some point. But yeah.
Well, and I wonder too if Hefner called in some things too for some of that, because I know like that's probably how he got all the Playboy playmates in this movie was through Hefner. And then at some point when they have the falling outs, it's sort of, I think what ends up happening, I guess he buys up the rights to the movie. Sidaris does. He essentially buys up Hefner's half because Hefner had sold the rights to MGM or something. But I wonder too if so many of those big celebrities back then had connections with Hefner. The whole there's that A&E documentary, Secrets of the Playboy Mansion, which is kind of talks about how bad some of the stuff was. But Philbin, you could see him spending before he and Joy were, I don't know when they were a couple, but yeah, I don't know if maybe there are moments where he was doing stuff like that. No, I always remember with Regis and Kathy Lee, when Kathy Lee would be out and Joy would fill in, she looked almost identical to Kathy Lee. I don't know what that was about, but like it was really weird. It was always kind of weird when you'd see that. I don't know if that was just me who noticed that. I don't know.
I don't remember. I don't think I really knew about Regis Philbin until much later on. I always got the impression he was more of an East Coast type of thing, and people out in your region knew Regis Philbin, but it took a while for him to kind of become a TV presence for a lot of the rest of the country.
Yeah. He used to. I remember he would be on Conan O'Brien's show. Like late night in the 90s, it was, because he was always having trouble filling bills. I remember he used to joke about how it would either be like, Abe Vigoda or Dr. Joyce Brothers. He would get like every other episode because he couldn't get guests on. And my favorite one was when he got Charles Grodin after CNBC canceled Charles Grodin's show to put reruns of Conan in that slot.
Uh-huh.
and he had to like interview Croton after that happened. It was like, kind of, I don't know if he was doing like a Beethoven movie or something like that, but he's like, yeah, so I guess my show is in the slot that your old talk show is. It was kind of a really awkward thing, but he would get those guests on at that time. Yeah, and I guess that big, Regis was one, like you said, he was kind of that live with Regis and Kathy Lee, that became a bigger thing, I think, with Kathy Lee Gifford, and all the scandals that happened. I don't know if you call them scandals, but like with the sweatshop with her clothing thing and all that kind of stuff. That yeah. So yeah, but yeah, Mr. Good old Regis Philbin. But like you said, he and his wife filmed it. It looked like it sounded like an infomercial, right? They're like, we're talking about, I think it was supposed to be like a talk show, but it felt like an infomercial.
Yeah. And it is, I mean, it is synced with the script. I mean, as they say things, there are events that are happening to this guy getting killed that kind of tie in with what they're saying. So.
Exactly, yeah. So the next day, they're Cody and Sybil Danning are sitting out by the pool, relaxing, and
first of all, I got to mention this. We've talked about Sybil Danning's outfits in this movie, okay, which. Well, and by the way, too, kind of segueing from that, one thing we haven't said is that, despite the fact that pretty much most of the rest of the female cast of this movie gets naked at some point, she does not, which, right. For Sybil Danning is surprising. But in this scene, she's wearing that snakeskin bikini, right. Which is like, I always think of that as being like one of the most iconic outfits that Sybil Danning's worn. I just, I always, if you go search for images of her and things like that, you're going to see those come up. It's just, I just always associate that snakeskin bikini with her.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. It's the closest that she gets to getting naked is at the very end of the movie. They show her in a Hawaii, another shower scene, right, where she's got her bikini and she's like opening the bottom and top of her bikini to get water inside. Cause I guess you get sand in the different spots of the bikini. That's like the closest we get to her being naked. But you're right, like everybody else. I mean, Lady Chamberlain doesn't get naked either. So
yeah.
But I think everybody else at some point we see them naked, and so it is interesting that Sybil Danning didn't. So when Cody discovers Brett Baxter Clark's dead body, he tells Sybil Danning, "Why don't you get out?" Oh, go ahead.
How long has he been lying there? Right. I mean, they're sitting there by the pool. How long have they been sipping mimosas by the pool? And then suddenly, oh, wait, there's a dead body over there.
and I mean, I don't know what time of year it was in LA, but I feel like it wouldn't take long in LA for you to notice that there's with how warm it gets there. I feel like, it's something you would probably start to smell really bad. But what he caused them to notice it is there's like a light reflection because of the TV that he carried out, I think, right? And the TV kind of broke or something. I can't remember.
Right. Yeah.
So he, the first thing he does is he tells Sybil Danning to go. Like, you don't want this heat because we got to call the cops. And then before he calls the cops, he calls a phone sex operator that he uses as like a I don't know, some kind of like phone transferring service. I don't know exactly how it works, but
it's a little unclear. And I was trying to remember in some of the other ones that go on, is there? I have a vague memory of there being like a phone sex thing, or maybe I'm thinking a radio station.
The radio
I don't
thing,
remember.
K-Sexy. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's what I was thinking of. Because anyway, but it's really unclear what exactly is the role of this thing in this whole kind of secret network of whatever,
right. It's almost like he wanted another excuse to have a woman to be topless and say sexy things, and also the funny thing is, like, he's trying to pretend he's not talking to her while he's in front of the whole the whole family there, and so they're all watching him, thinking he's calling the police, and he's like calling somebody else and telling them to call the police, and she's saying all of these things, like all these sexual innuendos and talking about how hot he makes her and how and all this stuff, and he's like trying to like get through this phone call without like really starting to lose it, which is great there too. But the cops come, and that's when his friend Beverly shows up with the lieutenant, and he and his friend decide to go to this beach house because I guess there was talk of like something going on at the beach house, like that was a situation.
Yeah, there's got to be some evidence of the beach house or something like that.
Yeah, and so that's where lady number 6 comes in, Beverly. He sleeps with Beverly there at the beach house. Also, we get shout. Oh, go ahead.
if you're going to the beach house to try and find some evidence,
Right.
okay, we're trying to see what was Shane up to, what's going on there. They get to the beach house, and the first thing they do is get busy, and it's like, all right, you're contaminating the crime scene if this is a crime scene,
Yes.
okay. I mean, let's jump back a second too. I forgot to mention when Shane ends up dead. I mean, it's a bloody affair. There's blood all over the room.
Yeah.
Cody's in there. He's touching everything. He's smearing stuff, and he's going, dude, your bloody fingerprints are all over the place now. I mean, Cody does not understand the way that evidence works here. He's messing it all up every moment he can here.
Exactly.
But hey, you got to check another woman off the list, so it's worth it, I guess. I don't know.
Exactly. Beverly, right? It's like essentially they get into the room, and then he makes a comment about how good she looks working out, and he's like, "Well," she's like, "Well, I'll show you the whole thing," and he's like, "Okay," So, yes. And then
I was surprised they didn't do it on the pool table. To be honest, there's a pool table right there, and I'm surprised that that's not where it happened. But I guess they got to get into the bedroom because that's where Shane had his little camera set up.
Exactly. It was a plot point because he finds the remote control while they're having sex, and he hits the button, and we find out because we had seen in previous scenes that's what when Shane was hooking up with Anita, the niece-in-law, at the beach house, and he was filming their lovemaking sessions with this camera. It was like essentially he'd hit a remote control button, and suddenly this camera would pop up and it'd start filming stuff. So that was the evidence that they needed. But then these two goons that were working, I think, for that John guy, they show up, and they've got guns or whatever, and Cody hears them coming a while away, and I guess, the movie needed a shower scene. We'd gone too long without a shower scene. So they hide in the shower. They actually turn the shower on, I guess, to make it more realistic. And the guys burst in thinking that they're going to surprise them in the shower. And, fortunately, Beverly has a gun because Cody can't shoot. He keeps missing them even though they're right in front of him.
This is like the iconic scene. I mean, when this popped up, I was like, oh yeah, they're standing there in the shower, and he tries to do a Dirty Harry thing. Right.
Right.
But I mean, the way the whole sequence then plays out, because this is where the film starts to shift. We're going from, where we've got a lot of emphasis on sexy time, and now we're going to get a bit more violent with things. And, they blow away these two guys, or she does. Cody doesn't, because we know Cody can't shoot straight.
Yes.
But it's kind of a fun moment. And this is also where, again, it's almost like this is the moment that Sidaris might have looked back at and said, okay, this is what I need to build my ongoing series around. It's not the hunky guy, it's the sexy lady takes these two guys out. That's what I'm going to build the whole rest of my 12 movie series on here.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think, he had this idea of, it's almost like you're to a good point. Like, I think he stumbles onto it because he has this idea of this goofy Clint Eastwood, Dirty Harry character, right? Who's hooking up with all these women, but also can't shoot straight. And so, of course, if he can't shoot straight, the women have to shoot. And that's a great point, because when you see, Beverly, Laurie Sutton is the actor who plays her, when she's got this little tiny gun, but she's like aiming it and shooting at those guys, it's really badass. And you look at all the covers of those movies, kind of, especially after Picasso Trigger, you start with Savage Beach in particular, right? Where you see, Hope Marie Carlton and Donna Speir on the cover with their guns and their gun belts and, boots and everything. It's almost like he realizes that's what I need to do. Like you said, like it's, it takes a couple of movies for him to get there, because he does the couple in between where he's still trying to do the Cody Abilene or the Abilene character thing. But, I think he Hard Ticket to Hawaii, you're right, has more of that in it. It's got more, Donna Speir blowing people up, Hope Marie Carlton, that kind of thing. And so, I wonder if he just saw that image and thought, okay, I really like how that looks.
Well, and I mean, even what you're saying there about the posters and such, I mean, I think even, they still were kind of easing into things. Because, like, if you look at the poster of Hard Ticket for Hawaii, it's a big image of the male lead.
Ron Moss.
Ron Moss.
Yeah.
Okay. holding a gun across his forehead and such. And then you've got Donna Speir and Hope Marie Carlton in smaller images there. And, so it's like, okay, here's a movie with sexy ladies, but, we've still got this man's man, most prominent on the poster. And then if you look at Picasso's Trigger, same thing. You've got a larger image of Steve Bond and then surrounded by a bunch of smaller images of ladies holding samurai swords and spear guns and things like that. And then it's not until we move on to Savage Beach that the primary image is Donna and Taryn. So yeah, it even took a little while for them to go, yeah, the folks are not watching these movies for the guys,
Well, and also too is that you look at Steve Bond and Ron Moss, they don't have the charisma that Darby Hinton has, and so I wonder if when he couldn't get Darby Hinton, he was trying to maybe find another Abilene to lead the series, and then realize why am I doing that when I've got Donna Speir and she seems to be doing a good enough job? And I mean, she does great. She's great as the lead. And so I know there's also a personal connection because she was dealing with alcohol addiction, and Sidaris and his wife Arlene had helped her through that, especially in getting the movies done and all of that. So I wonder if there's also a kind of a personal stake where he thought, okay, I can help her out with this, but also make her the lead because people like her in the lead. And I mean, it is exactly that. I mean, you see her these wetsuits and all of these different outfits, and then she's topless in the hot tub and all of that stuff, and it all works, perfectly. A lot of getting dressed and undressed as well. A lot of wardrobe changes in Sidaris movies.
I mean, I think when it comes to the men, I mean, aside from Darby Hinton does kind of stand out. I'm not going to say that he's that much above, the Ron Mosses or Steve Bonds, in terms of acting abilities. But I don't know. There's something about him that stands out in a different way. Go beyond that point, the men in the Sidaris movies start to blend together. I cannot say that about the ladies. I mean, there's no mistaking Donna Speir for Hope Marie Carlton, for Cynthia Bernthal, for Roberta Vasquez. They're distinct. Again, they're not great actresses, okay, but I don't mix them up.
Right. Well, I was going to say, to your point, too, when he switches over from Donna Speir, when Donna Speir leaves the series, he brings in Julie Strain. And I don't think there's another guy who gets swapped out for somebody as big as that. I mean, we get a couple, we the interesting thing is we get the Eric Estrada where he's a bad guy in one, and then he comes back as a good guy in the other one. And he's kind of still, it kind of felt weird when he was the good guy, because in a way he was sort of taking some of Donna Speir's thunder as the lead. But yeah, they don't ever do a replacement Julie Strain for Donna Speir for any of the guys. When Bruce Penhall's done, they just bring in other himbos, to play those parts.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, so okay. So we get the shootout here, and then he's got the film. So he goes back to his yacht, and of course he can't do anything at his yacht because these two women are always on him at the yacht. And he's got to call different women, and he calls Beverly, and she's like, "Are you alone?" And he's like, the women show up. The two women show up. Oh, I forgot. Okay, I'm kind of missing this. The night before, the two women show up, and Matthew, Mark, and John are, Matthew, yeah, I guess, or Matthew, Mark, and Luke. They attack him on the yacht to try to get the film, and
right.
He's able to fend them off. He shoots Matrano in the ear, and they leave. And so you think the girls are going to be too afraid to come back, but they come back the next morning. One of them's got a baton that she's swirling around. The other one has got a pot of coffee. And he's trying to make these business phone calls while they're all over him. And so Beverly says, "Are you by yourself? I feel like I hear something." He's like, "Yeah, I've got a topless woman giving me a pot of coffee, and another topless woman spinning a baton. Yes, of course I'm by myself."
Well, and I'm getting some parts mixed up here, but he calls to get the film developed too, because there's the two ladies at the racetrack are there's the girl that does the racing, June Knockers or whatever, and then there's the other girl who's a photographer. But here's what doesn't make any sense. He calls June Knockers basically to ask if the other girl is there so she can develop the pictures. It's like, why don't you just call the other girl? Why you call the photographer instead of calling the race car driver?
Right. I guess I wonder if it's because I wonder if like she wasn't near a phone or something. Yeah, you're right. It's a real fascinating thing, and
because I mean, based on what we know from the rest of this movie, you can't tell me that Cody Abilene has not had some sexy time with the photographer girl as well. I mean, we haven't seen it happen, but I think it's pretty much assumed, right?
They kind of hint at it, don't they? When and that scene you were talking about when they watch him drive away, when they're extolling his virtues. You get the sense that like, yeah, she's definitely had a roll in the hay with him as well.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, so Beverly shows he meets up with Beverly and they go to the racetrack together. Which of course, poor June, she sees him with Beverly and thinks, "Oh, what's this about?" You know, and it's really the only time in the movie, I think, right, that we see a woman, women that are invested with him, because that's the other thing is there's reality of that these women are not just out hooking up with other men the way that he's hooking up with all of these women, and June Knockers isn't all that happy about it, but that's she kind of is still willing to help him. They're developing the film. They get all these pictures and everything from Shane's camera, from Brett Clark's camera. And when they get outside, Matthew, Mark, and John are back. Or Matthew, Mark, and Luke. I keep wanting to say John. Matthew, Mark, and Luke are back. And it's a big shootout. Beverly gets hit.
But wait.
Oh, yeah.
Art Matrano, Matthew. Okay. We said the previous night he got shot in the ear.
Right.
Okay. And now he has this massive bandage.
Yes.
Covering not just his ear, but like most of the side of his face.
Right.
I mean, it's like you know me. I don't like to pull politics into these things here. I hate the subject. I can't stand it. But it certainly made me think, if all you people out there were complaining about the size of the bandage on Trump's ear last year, that's nothing.
Right.
Trump got nothing on Art Matrano. This thing is huge.
Right. If you were coming in the middle, like if you were flipping through the dial on, and caught this on HBO when you came in on the scene, you'd think like half of his face was like set on fire or something in an earlier scene. You wouldn't think that he just got his ear clipped, because the thing is in that scene when Cody Abilene clips his ear, it's another example of him not being able to shoot straight, because he just barely, like, you point blank range, he's barely able to clip his ear. It's almost kind of more for comedic effect.
Mm-hmm.
So Beverly gets shot in this exchange. The crew at the racetrack are getting, one of them gets killed. Actually, it's like a kid like driving a motorcycle who just gets killed by Matrano. It's almost like Matrano's losing it, because he had his ear shot. He's got his gun. He's like just kind of firing indiscriminately. So Cody,
that guy wasn't there that day, so he lucked out.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So they hop in the race car. Cody and Beverly or June Knockers. I keep going to call her June Knockers. They hop in the race car to drive away, and so that's when Matthew, Mark, and Luke they hijack in a helicopter, and the actual owner of the helicopter company and pilot, that's who they hijack. It's actually him. It's Harry Hauser.
Okay.
Yeah, and so they're flying the helicopter to try to chase after them, and the best part is that while they're chasing after them, June Knockers has no idea like how that this is happening. So she's like trying to straddle him. She's got her top off. She's showing him her boobs, all this stuff. And he's like, come on, get off me. We got to get out of here. We're trying, and it's not until the helicopter pulls up alongside and she shows them her boobs and they shoot at her that she's like, hey, wait, this is actually, he's like, yes, that's what I'm trying to tell you the whole time.
I mean, this scene almost like sums up Sidaris's whole game plan, because I mean, not only do we have an action sequence, but I mean, Sidaris of all people is able to turn an action scene into one where you also have a woman with her top off the whole time. I mean, it's just I guess I guess you could say that that's the guy's special skills there. He can find an excuse anywhere to have a woman have her top off, even in the middle of a chase between a car and a helicopter.
Yeah, it's perfect. And he gets another one in later, because then when the helicopter lands and they try to get him, first off, they run over or they hit Matrano with the car. He goes flying in the air when he gets hit by the car. And then they get out of the car to try to run off into the desert, and they're chased by the two bodybuilder guys. And he's running out of bullets because he's just shooting indiscriminately all over the place. Cody's running out of bullets, so they get into like this dune area, and John Brown, Luke of the bodybuilder, who's in some of the later movies, he shows up with a shotgun, and Cody says, "I can't shoot a moving target." And so June Knockers is like, "Well, I got you covered there." And she comes out and she flashes him. So of course he's just in awe, staring at her boobs, and that's when Cody's able to shoot him. And then he takes Luke's gun and shoots Mark. And so they've both been shot, and they kind of just like leave them, there, and they go themselves. That's when we get our director cameo, because
yes.
yeah.
Well, and I got to say one thing here before
Yes.
we mention that. This scene too, I mean, this is an example of, I think, where, again, further on down the series, we would have seen things happen differently, because you and I know we've both been well trained by Will Slater that anytime we see a helicopter, we expect it to blow up.
Right.
And in this case, the helicopter does not blow up. And I have to think that later on in the series, had this been a few more years down the line, Sidaris would have had the helicopter blow up. But here, he's not quite at that place yet in terms of the formula. He's not quite at that place yet, probably in the budget. So the helicopter lands safely.
Well, right, because he was renting it from just, he had the actual owner of the helicopter rental place in the scene. So in the later ones, it's actual like cast members that are flying. They're not actually flying the plane, but it's seen like they are. That they
right.
And so when they blow them up, it's like, well, you're not blowing up the poor old guy that ran the helicopter place. So, though I mean, Will would tell us that there are plenty of ways to get a helicopter pilot out of a helicopter and still blow up the plane. So it's not like that's any excuse for not blowing up the plane. But I think you're right. The other thing too is this was before IMDb, because I think nowadays I almost feel like movies sometimes blow up helicopters just so it can be a tag on IMDb. And at least Sidaris wouldn't have been thinking that way.
Yeah. But the man himself shows up here driving a Winnebago.
Yes, that's great. I mean, so June flashes them, and the wife. The funny thing about the wife is that because the woman playing his wife, I don't think it's actually Arlene. I don't know if that's actually Arlene. It's the wife. In the camper, but she's just like excited because she thinks they're like from Hollywood, that was, I guess, I don't know how much that's still a thing. There's still that concept of Hollyweird, but there was always this idea that anything goes in Hollywood. And so it's like, if you're going to Hollywood from anywhere else, that was like part of the thing, was that you wanted to experience the anything goes aspect of it.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And that's why she agrees to let Sidaris. Oh, it isn't. No. Okay, his wife plays a woman in sunglasses at a party. So, the woman in sunglasses. I didn't in the party scene where Cody is just kind of off talking to this woman with sunglasses. That seems like a kind of a random scene. That's Arlene. That's his wife. I didn't realize that.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, and then the poor kid who gets shot at the racetrack is his son, Christian Drew Sidaris. I missed all those things, but yeah, Andy's he's in the Winnebago, and he sees this topless woman, and he's just like excited to have her on. We get the best line, right, where she says, "God bless you for giving us a ride." Yeah, June Knockers, she says, "God bless you," and he goes, "God blessed you with that." So now we kind of get to kind of our sort of like our penultimate wrap up, where we think we know what's happening, and then we get our wrap up. So the penultimate wrap up is where we think it's Liza who's the killer, and the cops show up, they arrest Liza, they give her, they have all this evidence of why it's her and all of this stuff. And so we think that's it. She's arrested. That's the movie. But we still got a good 15 minutes left. And after, Cody finally beats the Buffingtons in a race with his dad's car, they go to his yacht where he brings everybody together, this is kind of a hallmark of these, the Sidaris movies later. Is that they're...
I mean, it feels like, like the Agatha Christie
right.
type of scene. We got to get everybody together and lay out what happened here,
Yeah, and that's where we find out that, in fact, it wasn't Liza who did it. But it was Sybil Danning's character, but she was doing it for a good reason. She was a government agent who was assassinating Clark because he was doing whatever. And so, it's a little bit, you got to kind of have your goggles on, because the loose ends start flying together really quickly. You got to have some eye protection, but it's still kind of a fun sequence.
Well, and is this where I guess we kind of shoehorn things into the other movies? Because I assume that Sybil Danning revealing that she's part of this government organization and such, that we're supposed to now believe that this is the same organization that our heroes are a part of as we get into Hard Ticket to Hawaii and Picasso Trigger and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I imagine, right? I think that's, because I wonder if his mindset was. I mean, the two big things that are different, obviously, with Hard Ticket to Hawaii. I mean, yes, it's Ron Moss instead of instead of Darby Hinton, but the other piece is the fact that Ron Moss's character is in a committed relationship in a way with Dona Speir. He's not just hooking up with as many women as possible. So those are the kind of the two big things. But you're right. It's also, he's not a private detective. He's a part of a government organization, and they're investigating these criminals that are based on the island there in Hawaii.
Don't they always just in those movies refer to it as the agency or something like that? I'm trying to remember. It's been a while since I've watched them.
I think Dallas Connection is the first one where they call it something. They call it Lethal or whatever. That's when it first gets a name. But before that, I think they also talk about DEA. I think they're like some kind of DEA agents in the early ones too. It's weird. It's always an interesting thing. It's he's because, like, for example, Hope Murray Carlton's character is not officially part of the agency, but she's helping Dona Speir's kid because they're sisters. She's helping her out. So he kind of plays fast and loose with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I was trying to think if there's other, because there's definitely some moments in this, and I was trying to think of anything like big that we missed in this. I mean, I think the one thing that I always love about this too is the other piece with Sidaris is he likes gadgets, and for 1985 we get a lot of different like recording devices. We get a pager, we get all kinds of fancy gadgets in this.
Yeah, stuff that would have seemed fancy in 1985, but now is kind of just commonplace now. I mean, there's an early car phone in this, so I was like, oh wow, that was definitely high tech. I'm talking to you from my car.
Right? Yes, and like even the recorder, like what and the recording device was interesting too because you get a lot of ADR in this movie.
Yeah,
and he kind of mitigates it a little bit with Cody's in Cody Abilene's case by having the voiceover part of it.
Yeah, and he holds the recorder up to the side of his mouth, and most of the time it's covering his mouth. So the fact that the lip movements are not matching doesn't matter. But the car bounces around, so every now and then his hand drifts away from his mouth, and you can see, oh yeah, that's not really what he's saying. Whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was always a kind of. I mean, also in that last scene there, where Lady Abilene says something about him being like a real ladies' man or something like that. I can't remember exactly what she said, or that he's always always willing to help out a woman or something like that. And like four of the women, they show Liza. He didn't actually hook up with Liza unless they cut that scene from the film. But they show it, but everybody else, it's like, yep, he's had sex with that one. It's like, they're all in one scene together. And I guess they don't know that that's part of the joke, right? Is they don't know that he slept with all of them.
Yeah. One thing I will say as we're wrapping things up here, and I don't know, I've seen this a couple times. This is probably my third time seeing the movie all the way through, I think. And this time around, it definitely dragged a little bit in a few spots. I was kind of, once all was said and done, I was like, the movie should have been about 15 minutes shorter. I mean, it's longer than a lot of movies that you typically discuss. This one's pushing, it's an hour 40, pushing an hour 45 or so. So it's a bit longer than a lot of the things that we usually think of when it comes to direct to video. And this time that really kind of came through for me. I was like, this one's not as tight as some of the others.
Yeah, especially when we get to that point, like you were saying, where after the beach house scene, it seems to almost be like repetition and slow moving. And then of course, like the Buffingtons thing, that kind of just, it's like, okay, it was funny the first time, but now we got to keep throwing them in, and they kept kind of moving things. I noticed it as well, especially after that point where it just kind of was like, boy, these scenes are taking a long time to play out. They definitely didn't need to. And I wonder what the reason for that was, because there were certain scenes that they wanted him to cut just because they were, for the sexual aspects of them. And he had to fight to kind of keep them because they had major plot points in them. I'm wondering, Yeah, when we get into the later movies, there's a lot more plot exposition plot exposition dialogue to carry things along. And I wonder if maybe he looked back at this one and said, "Yeah, maybe I could have had just two people having a conversation that would have told that part." I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think part of it is just that he's, like we said, he's still kind of getting his bearings when it comes to what works for him. I mean, I was just kind of trying to look at what some of the other ones run, and like Hard Ticket to Hawaii is right about the same time. It's 100 minutes, but Hard Ticket to Hawaii moves.
Yes.
Picasso Trigger, it's not showing me a runtime on here. I don't know how long that one is. But I mean, I think, you know, this there's many moments of this where it kind of feels like, they set up the camera and let it roll, and it's like, okay, we'll just kind of do it, and they weren't kind of trying to hone things. I mean, well, here we go. Savage Beast is 92
Right.
minutes. I mean, so, yeah, I think, again, I'm not going to say as we move through the series that we're talking about, films that are so much more stellar. I mean, there's a certain level that the Sidaris films get to, and you pretty much know what you're getting with all of them, and it's not like they really rise up to a higher level. But I think he hones his craft the more as we go here. Malibu Express is definitely a little bit of a testing ground, and I think you can see as you go through the series, he determined what works and he determined what didn't work, and kind of nailed down what his style was.
Yeah, and I think too, to your point earlier in this episode, when you talked about how this was on HBO a lot, and I think part of him making Hard Ticket to Hawaii was probably seeing this was on HBO. I mean, I just looked up because Hard Ticket to Hawaii and Picasso Trigger are both around like the 140 mark, and I wonder if that's also part of it, is he saw where these movies were going. They were late night HBO, video store rentals, and he's thinking like, I don't probably need as much plot in these movies. I don't need to pad things out as much. And
this one's definitely the heaviest on plot. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on in this movie, and I mean, I remember in one of the movies, I can't remember if it was Savage Beach or maybe the one right after, where Lisa London's character is in there, and she's in that restaurant that they all, the one that Edie ran, Edie's restaurant,
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they're talking to her, and they're like, and it's just like this conversation where they're just like, yeah, it must be tough being a DEA agent and running a restaurant like this, and it's just like, there's your plot about who this person is, and it's just like, it wouldn't be normal conversation. You wouldn't just say to somebody like, hey, yeah, it must be hard doing A, B, C, D, and E, or whatever it is, but he almost like realized that. And again, it was his way of like, okay, well, I can have more shower scenes if I have fewer plots or something like that.
Well, yeah. And that's the thing, like here, one thing I noted when Cody first shows up at the the family estate, and meets with what's her name, Lady, what do we say, Chamberlain,
Yeah.
Lady Chamberlain, and she literally launches into this big exposition thing of like who each family member is and what their role is and things. And I was like, Lady Chamberlain, you should call her Lady Plot Exposition, because it's just all this awkwardly scripted stuff. And there's other moments in this film that we get things like that, like even when Cody's like, oh yeah, this is my daddy and my boat, and grandma died in a plane crash or train crash, yeah. And all that kind of stuff. It's like, you don't need that. It's you need to make the script tighter and get to the stuff that we watch these type of movies for.
Well, yeah, that's a great point, because that scene itself would not go on that long in later Sidaris movies. Yeah, they would just get in and get out on that really quickly. And so, yeah, I think he understood what these movies were. He understood what he could get away with, I think, as well. Like, he understood, like, okay, I don't need as much plot. Nobody's watching this. If I cut out things, people aren't going to wonder why this happened there or that. And I think he was more concerned with that here. Like, because again, he wouldn't cut out certain scenes. Like, there was a scene where the two characters were in bed after having sex, and they were essentially naked, and the way they were laying, it looked like I think it was Brett Clark and the woman who played Anita Chamberlain. And it looked like Shelley Taylor Morgan. It looked like he was having sex with her from behind, and the board or whatever was like, you can't have that scene in there. And he's like, but I need that scene because it's an important plot point that they're giving during that scene. I can't cut it. And I think nowadays he'd look at that and be like, yeah, there's no important plot points in my movies. It just kind of all work.
even the scene with Cody and Beverly after they have sex in the beach house and we discover the cameras and stuff like that plays out way longer than it should. We you can get those details out and keep it tight, but it's stretched too long. So yeah, he definitely honed his craft as the years went on.
Exactly. And I mean, it is such a classic series. It is kind of fascinating, like you said, to watch this one as like the prototype, to kind of see some of the seeds that end up in the later ones, but also some of the things that he removes, like things like the Buffingtons and, and the switch from the Abilene who can't shoot straight as the lead to Donna Speir and then Julie Strain as the lead.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, there's a part of me that goes, I mean, there's a Buffington's movie out there somewhere, maybe. I don't know,
Right, exactly. I mean, do you think as we're wrapping up here, do you think like someone could reboot a series like this, or are we kind of I mean, it would have to be like direct to streaming or something like that. You probably wouldn't even have like physical copies of it. I almost feel like what we have is kind of what we have. I don't know if something like this could be rebooted.
Yeah, I don't know that it could. I mean, sure, we've got a lot of unique direct-to-video stuff out there. There's a healthy industry and a lot of different things, but there's something about these films that is so just rooted in the 80s and the 90s. I don't know how you update this. The this is just so purely of its time, I think.
Yeah, I agree, especially with the technology. I think, when you start, some when I was on the Lambcast and we were talking about Fantastic Four, one of the things that Richard and Jeanette both really liked about that was that you had knobs. That instead of like, what's his name? Robert Downey Jr. with like his fingers and like there's like little screen things that are in air like that. You actually have knobs and tube screens and things like that. And I do think like nowadays, if you were going to do computer stuff in a movie, it can't be like it was in this movie. You can't have, the pager and all that stuff. And that's kind of part of the fun, I think.
Oh, we didn't mention the pager. That pager is like the size of my shoes. It was huge.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how, I guess you have to have it strapped on your pants or something, right? You can't put it in your pocket. And it was like having like full text. I mean, it was like a doctor's pager or something like that.
Hey, Cody, are you got a pager in your pocket, or you're just glad to see me?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's like, again, with this being on Tubi, I think those kind of elements with the rest of the Sidaris vibe, I think it definitely makes for a fun watch.
I mean, they're pretty much all on Tubi right now, I think. I mean, like I said, I invested $12 in that collection that came out back a decade or so ago. But I mean, it's easy to watch them now. They're pretty much all on Tubi, I think.
Yeah, they're all definitely worth the watch as well. Well, as we're wrapping up, Todd, anything else about this movie that we missed that you wanted to mention?
Oh man, I think we covered it pretty well. We definitely covered my notes.
All right, perfect. Well, but before we wrap up, anything that you wanted to plug?
Well, of course, I'll plug my podcast. It's called the Forgotten Filmcast. So you can find that wherever you find your podcasts. On each episode, I'm joined by another blogger or podcaster to talk about a movie that doesn't get talked about very much. Matt has been a guest on the show many times. He will be again. And other folks that have been frequent guests of this show. We've had Ty from Comeuppets on. John Cross was on recently. So yeah, our podcasts are definitely feeding each other. And I'm on all the different socials. You look for Forgotten Films on places like X and Blue Sky and Threads and Instagram. You'll find me, and I'm also on Letterboxd. I love sharing everything I watch on Letterboxd, so yeah, definitely follow me there as well.
Yes, excellent. Yeah, I mean, as we're recording this now, your most recent episode was City Beneath the Sea, which a 1953 Anthony Quinn film, and then the week before that, you did The Curve, a 1998 like lower tier teen thriller with still had Matthew Lillard, but kind of lower tier. So it definitely runs the gamut of different. And then before that one, you did kind of I guess the last disaster movie when time runs out. Is that what it was? The from 1980.
When Time Ran Out. Yeah, it's a volcano movie from 1980 with Paul Newman and Ernest Borgnine and a bunch of other folks. And yeah, we've got a bunch of cool episodes coming up as well. The next one, we're staying in the 50s. We've got a Kirk Douglas, Burt Lancaster film, a Revolutionary War thing called The Devil's Disciples. So that one is coming up, and we're going to be recording with Matt next week, so we'll save that. But that's coming up too, and I'm in talks with Ty right now for a return visit. So yeah, a bunch of cool stuff going on.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, yeah, when time ran out, that one is just it's like what 3 months before Airplane comes out, and it's like I don't know if Airplane killed the genre, if the genre was already dying when so maybe like it delivered the death blow. But it's like yeah, you kind of get a feeling that those movies are kind of on their way out, and then suddenly Airplane comes in and just is like delivers a death blow and just kind of finishes them off completely.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well,
Airplane's classic.
yeah, I love that one. It's like, I just always remember that one being on. It feels like the disaster movies, the TV channels didn't air them as much after Airplane. They kind of gave it some time before they aired them again because it was almost like, you'd see every joke in Airplane in any of those movies.
Well, and the great thing about Airplane, and this is going back a long ways, one of the early days of my podcast, we actually covered a film called 0 Hour, which 0 Hour is the film that Airplane is remaking. I mean, they basically took the 0 Hour script and then spiced it up with comedy bits and turned it into Airplane. But there are many moments in 0 Hour that you go, oh my gosh, they did that scene exactly in Airplane. So
that's amazing. I love that. That's so perfect. I'll have to see that movie because I didn't know about that. I knew about like the airport movies. I didn't realize that the 0 Hour. I'll have to check that one out because now
the airport movies are wonderful too. And I think it was is it Kino Lorber? I think just announced they're releasing a set of all four later this year. So I think just in time for your Christmas list. Yes. I love the airport series. They're amazing.
Yeah, it's such a great thing because it was like at that same time you had these big magical big movies like Jaws and Star Wars, stuff like that coming in to kind of end those disaster movies, but that kind of that last gasp of them is really fascinating. Some of the actors that would be in those movies, like an Ernest Borgnine, got to have him there. Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you again, Todd, for coming on. This was a ton of fun.
Always great. Love being on your show. I anytime you want me, I'm here.
Oh, absolutely. No, we'll definitely have you on again soon for sure. And thank you everybody for listening. We'll be back soon. Bye, everyone.